I was sentenced to 20 life sentences, and it was done illegally. I was not an armed career criminal. They had a prior conviction that was in there that was not even my prior conviction. But of course, the judge blew us off and she imposed a life sentence anyway, using a prior conviction that wasn't even mine. At the time of this discovery is the time when George Floyd got killed. It shifted everything when it came to not being able to sweep certain things under the rug. When my mom found out I was selling drugs, I had to be about 14 years old, because I had actually got arrested for driving a stolen car that I had rented from a crackhead. I had been giving him drugs to rent the car, and I had the car for like 2 weeks, 2 weeks further than what it is now. And so he kept asking for more drugs, and I'm like, no, like I got the car for 2 more weeks. So he got pissed off, and of course he reported the car and stolen. Got pulled over by the cops. Of course they said the car was stolen. I'm a juvenile. I'm only 14 years old.
So when he said license and registration,
of course I don't have no license and registration. I mean, he seen like he knew I was a kid. Like as soon as he pulled me up, got to the window or whatever, he told me to step out the car. So he already knew what was going on. So, but yeah, I got arrested. They sent me to the juvenile detention center in Hennepin County. I ended up going to court. The next day.
Did you call your mom?
I didn't call.
Too scared to call my mom.
No, I didn't call my mom. They called my mom.
Oh, okay.
That's actually what happened. They called my mom, and so I didn't say anything to her. But when I had court the next day, she was there, and so.
Did you give her the nod?
No, she was there. Like when you were, back in the day when you was a juvenile, they sat right next to you. Your mom she sat right next to me.
My dad used to always say, listen, you get in trouble. This is when I was like 15, 16, he said, you ever get arrested? He says, you don't want to call me.
Right.
You don't want to. I remember thinking too, boy, I'm staying in jail.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's going to happen.
When they had gave me a bond, and my bond was like $700 cash is what the bond was. And so my mother, she didn't have it, because of course she had went Christmas shopping for us as well. And so she didn't really have it. So I'm like, she's like, well, I'm going to call your aunt, and see if I can get it from your aunt. And I'm like, you don't got to do all that. I'm like, listen, when you go home, go look in the dirty clothes hamper, all the way in the bottom, grab that sock. And so
oh, no.
She goes home. Next thing you know, I go back. They're telling me, oh, pack your stuff, you're being released. So I'm thinking she's going to be out there, in the waiting area when I get there, but she's not. It's my brother. This is my older brother at the time. He's 15. She sends him. So I'm like, where's mom at? And he was like, yeah, she sent me down here. I'm like, okay. I'm like, fine. So I'm like, well, where's my money at? So mind you, my mom, she bailed me out and kept all of the money except maybe like $500.
How much money was it?
I want to say it was like $4,200 at the time.
Oh, my God.
And so she kept
but
all
then
of
again,
it. Right.
What are you doing?
Yeah. So that's how she knew. So when I ended up making my way home later that night, she came and she said, boy, I know what you're doing. But you better stop. And that's what she said. If you ever go to jail or get arrested for doing it, I'm not coming to get you.
I mean, do you continue to do this through high school?
Yeah, like that was, I dropped out of high school. I dropped out of high school in 9th grade. My day consisted of getting up, going to the block. Mm-hmm. That's what my day consisted of. We had a strip called Selby, maybe like a 9-block, 10-block radius, where that whole strip, you can just walk up and down that strip and you can make you some money. You can come out of the house, you can have a whole Ziploc bag full of drugs. And you're going to sell it along the way because there's crackheads. That's where they know they can come buy drugs at. You see fiends out there, and they just like, get ahead now, like, what's up? And we pulling over, like, hey, what's up? What you need? What you want? And so it just kept going on for years until I caught my first drug case when I was 15 years old. I got caught with a half ounce. What I got caught with.
So what happened? I mean, you're just walking along. They
we were
pull up on you.
No, actually, I was in another fiend's car that I had rented, and I remember coming down street, and I was finna take a right, and I guess the guy, I don't know if he was gonna take a right as well too, but he didn't.
The cop?
No, not the cop. It was just another person, in a car.
Oh,
and so. He was pissed off at me because I got in the right lane and took a right. So I'm assuming he was trying to take a right as well too, but he didn't have his blinker on. So a couple blocks away there was a police car that was there. he went, stopped, flagged the police car down and told the police like, hey, you know, this kid just driving in his car just cut me off. And so when I come back around, you know, the block, I see the police, I see him at the police, you know, car, in his car, and I see the police car flying, like, you know, leaving from where he's at. Like, you know, I know he's coming for me, so I pull over and I get out and just start walking. But I forgot that I actually had, you know, the ½ ounce in my pocket. I forgot it. So when the police pulls up, the police gets out. I was like, hey, come here. And I'm like, for what? You know, now I'm gonna run. Mm-hmm. You know, but then I'm like, what am I running for? I don't got nothing. So it was crazy because, like, as I got closer to him, I stuck my hand in my pocket and I felt the drugs. You know, I'm like, oh, shit, you know. And so once I felt the drugs, that's when I started to take off running. But I get caught. I got arrested, like I said to you. But I was a juvenile. I was only 15 years old. And I sat in the juvenile detention center for a while. My mom did not come get me. As she said, they ended up giving me 2 years in Glen Mills, which was a boys' reformatory in Conquerville, Pennsylvania. And when I got out of there, I was 17 on my way to 18 years old. And so when I got out of there, though, you know, like that kind of, it changed me a little bit. You know, I kind of had a different type of focus, you know, honestly, because I was, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't want to go back there, you know, just because of, you know, the abuse that for about 5 months, I was just on the straight and narrow. I wasn't back on the streets. I wasn't doing nothing. I was actually working at the rec center. And I did that for a while, you know, and I vowed to stay out of the trouble, stay out of the way. But like I said, after, you know, doing that and trying to work a little job, it wasn't really bringing nothing in.
Yeah.
You know, so like I said, you know, in the neighborhood, you constantly walk out the door, you constantly see, you know, what's actually going on and what's actually happening. You got dudes riding by with the cars, you know, and the stuff like that. And, you know, they got the, you know, the gear, you know, stuff like that. So it just was, it was difficult, you know, to kind of like still maintain that same focus. So I was out for about 8 or 9 months and I ended up catching another case. So, which was, it wasn't a dope case, it was a shooting case. I had actually shot 2 people.
I feel like there's a story there.
Like that was one thing. Like one thing about me, just growing up and being in my neighborhood is, I was a young kid who found himself not necessarily being bullied, but being tried. Mm-hmm. On many occasions, I used to just always stay out the way. Like, nah, I'm not engaging. You know, but after a while, I kind of felt like first of all, I'm not soft.
Yeah, you're being taken advantage.
Yeah,
of.
I'm not soft. You know what I'm saying? And so it's kind of funny because it's like if you remember the movie Juice, when Tupac had, you know, got that gun, you know, and he kind of went crazy, shot Rodamez, you know what I'm saying? Like, and these was his friends that he grew up with or whatever. So after a while, when I got my first firearm, man, if anybody tried me, and I was trying to kill you. You know, like for real, like I was that young kid who was in the neighborhood and we got into it, I was kind of come back shooting. And that's how I ultimately caught my first adult charge. I got certified as an adult at 17 years old.
So what happened with the guys or the person you got into the shootout with? What was the story there?
Well, what ended up happening was there was a guy in my neighborhood who was like, he was known for like selling drugs on a much bigger scale than I could imagine. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of people had been saying that he was like the cops, though. You know, and so he knew I was, you know, from the neighborhood, and he knew I was somebody who was out there hustling. He would always try to give me stuff, you know, or he would try to get me to connect with him. And I'm always just like, nah, no, you know, I'm hearing the rumors, you know what I'm saying, from other people.
Yeah.
Like,
Your concern is he's going to set you up.
You know, like he's cops or whatever. And so I remember one day I seen him in the neighborhood on Selby. He was adamant like, hey, man, why don't you mess with me, man? And I'm like, nah, I'm cool, I'm straight. And so I leave from there. It was at the record store. I leave from there. I go to the self-car wash where you can wash your own vehicle. And I'm sitting there, and I'm washing the vehicle, and here he comes. He pulls up again. And so he's like, man, like, what's up, man? Like, mess with me. And I'm like, no, like, you know, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? But then now there's a light bulb that clicks in my head, you know? And I'm like, I should take his shit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He's so adamant about trying to mess with me, and then I'm getting these rumors in the streets that this dude is the cops or whatever. You know what I'm saying? You know what? I'm going to take his shit. I happen to see him again. I'm like, all right, man, just call me. So he called me. I'm like, yeah, well, I put an order in. I'm like, man, let me get this. He's like, okay, I'm gonna call you when I'm ready. I'm like, all right, fine. So he called me, like, meet me over here, meet me in South Minneapolis. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I go over there, meet him over. I actually beat him there, actually. But what I did was I had took like $10,000 with me because I'm like, well, if he brings somebody, I'm just gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying to you, as opposed to taking it, because I didn't know. So I beat him there. So when he pulls up by himself. He's like, man, get in the car. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I get in the car with him. We drive away from the area where I met him at, and I had my firearm on me. And so as we get further away from where we met at, I pull it on him. I'm like, man, give me this shit. You know what I'm saying to you? And so he's like, oh man, like, what's going on, man? You know what's going on, pull over. So I take it. I go in his pockets, took the money he had. And so I end up just walking back towards where my vehicle was at. Later on that night, I was in, my neighborhood, and there was somebody who had actually called me and wanted to buy some drugs. And so, but I had the drugs, at my kid's mother house. And so I'm in the alley, and as I'm in the alley and I'm walking out the alley to walk around to my kid's mother's house, I see the guy coming down the street, but he's with another guy in the car with him. And so I didn't have my firearm on me, so I just take off running. And at the time, my girlfriend, she was in the car. And so they tried to chase me, of course, but I got away. But when he rolled by, the car was parked in the alley. He seen my car that was parked in the alley. And so him and the guy that was in there, they tried to proceed to take the vehicle from my girlfriend, but she had seen him like pull in or whatever. And so she had grabbed the keys out of the ignition and she stashed them. But they slapped her up and stuff like that. So I was pissed off about that more than anything, And so later on that night, I was just patrolling in the neighborhood, and I happened to see the guy standing on the corner with a couple other guys, and I just rolled by and I just, got out the car and I just started firing. And I shot him, and then I also shot another guy who was an innocent bystander. He was, at the time, he had owned the only cell phone store in our neighborhood. And I was 17 years old, and of course they both gave statements to the police. And the police had been looking for me, so I probably was on the run for maybe about 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. I got arrested somewhere in the neighborhood. I can't remember right now, but somewhere in the neighborhood. And 17, and I got certified as an adult for 2 counts of assault in the second degree.
So they both took a bullet, but they didn't die. They just okay. Mm-mm. Poor cell phone guy.
One
just trying to run my business.
Yeah, one.
If there's one thing I've learned doing this podcast, it's that the details matter. A lot of the interviews take place over 2-3 hours, and the stories range from 6 months to a decade. So there's a lot of details. People, places, times, and if you miss just one detail, you can really, really ruin the story. That's why I use Plod Note. At first, I use it as a backup for the audio during interviews. But what I really like are the AI features. After an interview, Plod gives me a summary and a transcript of the interview. I can find what I'm looking for in seconds instead of spending hours and hours searching through the transcripts. My favorite feature is Ask Plod. Let's say a guest mentions a date or an important event. I can ask Plod, what was the neighborhood Carlos grew up in? And Plod will find the answer right away. Here's another example. I asked Plod for specific steps on how to educate yourself while incarcerated. It gave me examples from the podcast and even made an infographic. It saves me a lot of time when reviewing interviews and putting together stories. If you do podcasts, interviews, meetings, or even just take notes, I think you'll find it useful too. Check out Plod Note using the links in the description box below and use promo code TrueCrime for 15% off or more. Again, that's code TrueCrime for 15% off or more. Check out the links below and learn more.
Yeah, one of them got shot in the arm, and I want to say one of the other guys got shot in the leg or something like that.
They're fine.
Yeah.
So, you don't get bond?
No,
okay.
Absolutely not.
All right.
Absolutely.
I mean, what did you end up getting on that?
I ended up going to trial.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
I ended up going to trial.
Why? Why did you think that was?
I mean, just 'cause naive, dumb,
Did you think maybe he won't show up?
Well, The guy who I took is the guy who shit that I actually took.
Yeah.
He didn't show up.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I
Right,
would
yeah,
think.
yeah, he didn't show up. It was the guy
the
that
cell phone
the civilian guy. Yeah, he showed up and he pointed him out, and that's how I ultimately got convicted. But of course, I didn't think that neither one of them was going to actually come to court.
So what'd you get sentenced to?
I ended up getting 48 months.
How old are you at this point?
I was 17. I got certified.
This is all while you were 17?
Yep, I was 17 years old. They gave me 48 months, 36 months for the actual assault in the second degree to 2 counts, but they had to run them concurrent, and then another year because I was on probation. But then after filing an appeal, I ended up getting the year off because at the time of sentencing, the judge didn't stipulate and give a reason as to why he was giving me 48 months. So I won an appeal and got a year off.
But you went to like a real prison this time.
Yeah, I got certified. I went to
those are serious charges too.
Yeah,
like,
I went to St. Cloud, which St. Cloud at that time was gladiator school.
Yeah.
Like that's where it was. Like St. Cloud was.
It's not the camp at Coleman.
Oh no, yeah, no. St. Cloud prison was like that. It was. You walk in there, they gonna ask you, you Crip, you a Blood, you GD, you a Vice Lord, they gonna ask you what your affiliation is, and that's kind of like how St. Cloud was. St. Cloud was kind of like segregated like that back in the day, where you ran with who you like. If you was from St. Paul, you ran with the St. Paul dudes. For the most part, everybody knew everybody anyway, though. But in any issues, it would always be with people from the other side. Always.
So the only time that happened with me, it happened a couple times. I know. You look at me, Colby, you think tough guy. Of course it happened.
Yeah.
But I walked in and the guards would ask you.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't an inmate. The CEO was like, "Who do you run with?" I'm like, "What?"
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I thought you maybe meant.
Oh no. But like I said, when you like in St. Cloud, like when I was locked up in my first prison bit, when I went there, I knew so many people from St. Paul that was already there. Whether it was in there for a couple guys that I knew and grew up with, caught murders at 17 years old and stuff like that.
Right. You know what you get. I mean, keep in mind.
But they ask you though. Yeah, they ask you when you get there.
I've never been arrested. Like, look at me. I'm as soft as cotton. And these guys are like, and when the CO asked, who do you run with? I'm like, what? What?
Yeah.
Like I don't even understand the question. And he's like, who you with? What?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't. And then he, are you gang affiliated? Are you? I'm like, no. I'm clueless.
Right.
Clueless. As opposed to, 10 years later being in prison.
And then realize what that meant. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, not just that. I remember being moved one time. I was being transferred. And, they, you know this, but for people that are watching, they put you in the bus.
Yeah.
They take you, 4 hours here. And then they unload everybody into like, it's like a county jail, but whatever. It's a U.S. Marshals holdover. Yeah. And you get out. And there are guys that are with me that are terrified. They just got arrested 2 days earlier. They have no clue.
Right.
And you get your shit, you're walking, and it's 11 o'clock at night, man.
Yeah.
You've been in the holding cell, you've been eating a bologna sandwich, you're miserable. And you're walking, and there's guys that are locked up. We're in like the second tier, and there's guys banging on the doors, with the little tiny thing, put them in here, put them in here. Yeah. And they're screaming. And, of course, it had been, well, actually, by that point, I think it had been like 7 or 8 years later. So I'm laughing.
Yeah.
I'm cracking up.
Because you know what's going on.
Of course.
Yeah, they're clueless.
These guys are, oh, my God. You can't put me in with these guys. And I'm sitting there like, bro, they're just fucking with you. We're in a fucking, this is a low dorm.
Yeah.
You're probably one of the toughest guys here. Like, you're fine, But they were terrified. And I just thought, bro, you would have been pissing your pants if you'd gone through that the first day. Yeah. So, not that I was really any more prepared for it or like I was a tough guy, but at least I knew that guy, when they open that door, that guy's going to be like, hey, bro, you got the top bunk? I got a couple books here. Like, he's not. Yeah. He's just fucking with you.
And like I say, for the most part, like that's how I was. Like, 'cause, you walk in for the first time, you don't know what to expect. You get what I'm saying to you? And it was a relief for me, especially like going to one of the housing units where I knew people that I actually grew up with in my neighborhood. So it was a little bit more.
It's comforting.
And then they were the ones who kind of like gave me the game and told me like, look, this is what's going on here. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. You get what I'm saying? This is where we sit at, and stuff like that. And so I didn't really have no issues. Like I think I went to the hole. I think once when I was in state prison, I only went once.
So when you got out of there, you're what? You're like 20?
Yeah, I was 20 years old when I got out of there. And the mentality was, when you get arrested for something outside of selling drugs, the first thing you're gonna tell yourself is, I'm still a good drug dealer. I'm going back. You know what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
So the mindset is, man, I gotta get out here. I gotta give me some money.
Yeah, that was the problem.
Right.
I need to stick with this.
Right. You know what I'm saying to you? I gotta get out here and give me some money. And so, like I said, when you grew up in a neighborhood, of course you establish friendships and relationships with people. And so a couple of the guys that I knew and grew up with, when I got out, they had it. So it was nothing for me to get out, and they say, okay, well, look what you need. And then they put some more dough in my hand, and so I got right back to it, and it was, when I got out from that prison stint, I'd actually got violated like in 22 days because I got kicked out the halfway house because they said I was a bad influence to the residents there. Because
it's a halfway house.
Right, but they said that because like when I got there, so I had, like I said, I had a lot of people and a lot of support, so I didn't need anything from the halfway house. And so I'm paying people to do my job, my work assignment. I'm coming in, if they're telling me to empty my pockets, I got a bankroll of money. You know what I'm saying to you? And then I was smoking, and so I'm catching dirty UAs and stuff like that.
You're not trying to do right.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Of course not. You know what I'm saying? And then, when you do that little soft little state bit, the first thing you tell yourself is, man, I can get back to it. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't respect it. You don't respect the time at that. Then the time is so easy. It's like, it's really like a camp. You going in there, you got a TV, in state prison, a fan, hot pot. You know what I'm saying? You got contact. Yeah, you got contact visits. You know what I'm saying? So it just was.
Never had a TV.
It was just, we had all that. Then you had one man cell. You got carpet in there if you want to put carpet in your cell. It was crazy.
Listen, I'm not going to keep telling the stories, but
yeah.
But you'll appreciate that. Are you Muslim?
No, I'm not Muslim.
Oh, okay. But you were in there with Muslims.
Yeah, of course.
Listen, I was locked up, so you'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
I was locked up with a guy, white guy. I mean, we're talking about white, pale white, blonde hair, everything. Yeah. And his cellie had told a story one time. He said that this guy when he got here, somebody was like, I don't know how he ended up with it. He paid somebody $5, like a book of stamps, whatever, half a book of stamps, whatever. That these guys had a prayer rug, right. And they were like getting rid of it. And he goes, "Oh, I'll take it. How much?" And he got it, and he put it down in his cell. Right. And so when his cellie comes in, he's like, "Hey, man," he got a couple of them. He's like, "Hey, I got a couple of rugs for the cell." Yeah. And he's like, "Those are prayer rugs." He's like, "Yeah, these guys, they black guys were selling it." He's like, "What are you doing?" Yeah. You can't be putting these things down. Like, right. You're going to get a stab.
Yeah,
like,
to walk on them, yeah.
Yeah, you can't be walking on prayer rugs. These are religious items. Like, what are you doing? And, he thought, I'm decorating the cell. Right. So I was like, what were you thinking? He's like, I had no idea. Like that, he just got locked. He's like, I had no idea. I didn't know.
He was just naive.
Like these guys would have been fucking furious.
Yeah, they definitely would have been hot.
So you get back out, you go through a halfway house, and you're back at it again.
Get right back to it.
20 years old. Yeah. 20, 21?
Yeah, I was at that. No, I was. When I got out from that time, I was on my way to 21. It was just the same routine, Get up every day, hit the block. And just like I said, you go through that whole little 10-block radius and just see what I can see.
How long does this go on?
2-3 years before I caught my second actual charge in state prison again.
What happened there?
My other charge was another shooting charge. I ended up shooting a guy in his ass because he had robbed one of my, well, not him, but a couple of his buddies robbed one of my buddies. And my buddy who they robbed, he had some of my drugs. And I had specifically told them, because I went out of town. There was a female friend that I was dealing with at the time. She was going to college at Tuskegee University in Alabama. And so I'm like, well, listen, if they call this pager, you can deal with these guys directly. And so they ended up robbing my buddy. And so I'm pissed off, of course, because like I said, the relationship that I had between myself and the other guy, I called him, I'm telling him hey, that was my stuff that they took. And so I'm like, man, you gotta rectify that. Like, man, make sure you straighten that. And so he acted like he didn't want to. So I'm like, okay, all right, well, you ain't gonna rectify it, okay, fine. And so I eventually caught him, and when I caught him, I shot him in his ass, you know, and because at the time I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? That you disrespect me, I'm feeling like this.
Unfortunately, in the street, that is what you're supposed to do.
That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? So so it's like, but
you're not going to file a lawsuit,
right?
Like, that's your recourse, right?
Absolutely,
there.
yeah. And then of course, like the same other two guys before, he gave a statement, told the police my name.
That's the part I like. The store owner I get, but the other guys, you're shooting at each other, like that's what. But it's funny. Cook, it's like Cook's guy. The guy robbed a buddy of mine I had on. A guy robbed him, and then when he's like, "Hey, I need my shit," the guy's like, "Fuck off."
Yeah.
And he was a little kid. He was like 17. He's a skinny little 135-pound kid. And he's like, oh, okay. So then he breaks, and then he I think he goes to like the sliding glass doors or something. I threw something through him, right? A brick, and smashed it and came in with a shotgun and knocked the guy's teeth out and took his shit and whatever. But then the guy called the police. He didn't say he took drugs. He said he robbed him, but he knew who it was, and they grabbed him. And then Cook goes to trial. He actually won at trial, but it's just like you robbed me, and then I robbed you, and then you called the police. Like, well, wait a minute, I could have called the police.
Yeah, for sure.
So but it's
so
it's a horrible situation. Bro.
No, it definitely is. And so, but in that situation, like I said, I had the guy knew who I was, so he told the police my name. Of course, and so eventually I got arrested. Instead of going to trial, I ended up taking a plea agreement, which was 52 months. I ended up doing 37 months altogether off of that, because like in Minnesota, at that particular time, you only did 8 months off every year. But luckily for myself, like I said, I knew a bunch of people that was there, so I of course ran with the people that was from my neighborhood, and I just kept my head down, focused in. My mindset was just, okay, I just got to get out here and, and just switch it up and, and do something a little bit different, But my mindset was still on the same thing, which was some money. You know what I'm saying? Because like I said, I didn't get caught selling no dope. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm saying to myself, okay, when you get out here, you gotta get back to it. You know what I'm saying? So but you gotta put that firearm down though. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's what it was. You fast forward, if you will, like 3 years later, and I had got arrested because I had got caught with some drugs. And so I'm in the county jail. There was a kid in particular from my neighborhood that I didn't know, but he was familiar who I was because of his cousins, and then he knew like from my car, because at the time I had a back then they called them like low riders or whatever. Like I had a 78 Grand Prix with hydraulics on it, with chrome and gold Dayton's on there. And so he was familiar with my car. And so I'm in the county jail with this kid, and so, and I should have knew then, like he was really no good, because he had a bail of like $300 that he couldn't get out. Would nobody come get him? Mm-hmm. We're talking about a $300 bill. Like you can't get out from you gotta be a piece of shit.
Yeah, you fucked over.
Yeah,
everybody.
So you gotta be a piece of shit or whatever. And so, but he was my cellie. He was my roommate. And so, him and I, but he was from my neighborhood, so he and I just, ended up kind of like getting real cool or whatever. Fast forward, I ended up getting violated and get sent back to state prison. And then because I had so many priors in criminal history points at that time for the smoke charge, which was only a 5th-degree possession charge, it was an automatic commit to prison. So I ended up having to plead guilty to 21 months for just some small smoke, like nothing, Just during the course of that, he and I, we always kept in contact with each other, And so when I ended up getting out, he ended up catching a charge. So we weren't on the street together. But then fast forward, he gets out. And so after that, like we used to just hang, here and there, whatever. I would help him out as much as I can, and it's funny because it's like I used to call him my son. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Because he was younger than me, but he looked up to me. I used to call him my son, and so I used to look out for him all the time. And he was in the same situation I was in, just trying to, get to some money or whatever. But his mindset was, of course, a little bit different than what mine was at that particular time. He was the one who originally because he knew that I kept firearms. You know what I'm saying? He knew that he knew that I kept firearms because I would just have them for, in case I got into it with somebody in the streets. And so it started off with one day him calling me like, "Hey man, I need a firearm. Where are you at?" I'm gonna tell you no. I'm like, all right, I'll give it to him. And so of course he'd bring it back 2-3 days later. I'm like, all right, here you go. I'm not thinking nothing of it. I didn't ask him what he did with it or anything like that, because it's my little buddy. Like I said, I used to call him my son. It might be 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks go by or whatever. He's calling again. "Hey man, can I get a, let me get a firearm."
He wants a different one.
No, he's just
Same one?
Just let me get a firearm. Period. Let's me get a firearm. And so I'm like, all right, where you at? Meet me, whatever. So I give it to him. Like I said, you might be later on that day or the next day. He come back and give it back to me. I want to say this probably happened about 3 times. So there was another time. So my brother calls me. He's like, "Hey man, watch the 6 o'clock news." I'm like, all right. So I'm at one of my little ex's house at the time, and I watched the 6 o'clock news. So on the 6 o'clock news, they show like this robbery. You got guys in these white T-shirts, mask on and stuff like that. Jumping over counters or whatever.
It's like a jewelry store?
No, it's like a gambling establishment, like inside of a bar. Mm-hmm. You had a gambling establishment where they sold pool tabs at. Because it's like this. It's like how you can go in a corner store and buy a lottery ticket or a scratch off. Pool tabs are like scratch offs, and they're like these little cardboard things. You peel them off, and if you have a winner on there, they pay you. They pay you the cash right then and there. And so you have some that might be.
This is like a legitimate thing?
Right, yes, yes. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I watch the news, and as I'm on the news, watching the news, I for sure know who this is. You can just tell by the body language, the type, I know who this is.
Yeah.
And so mind you.
It doesn't matter if you got a mask on or not. You're going to recognize
I know who it is. And so I'm watching this, so I'm like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? So I call him. I'm like, "Hey, where you at?" So I'm in the neighborhood. I'm like, "Man, I'm gonna meet you. I'm gonna call you when I get to the neighborhood." So I call him. He comes to meet me. So I'm like, "That's what you've been doing?" So I'm like, "Hey, you got to stop that. You're about to go to jail. Like, you done made it to the news. Like, you big time.
I recognize
you're big time now. You done made it to the news. You're big time. You get what I'm saying? He's like, stop that. You're big time." Time goes by, and it's still going on. But now I'm not the one providing the weapons, though.
Right.
You know what I'm saying to you? But I didn't end my relationship with him, which I probably should have, but I didn't though. Cause like I said, I used to call him my son. And so I hit a spot where now it's a little tight on me financial wise, So once I get wind as to, what the take is, where, you go in there, you rob one of these establishments, you walk away with 30, 40,000 in a matter of less than 2 minutes.
Right.
And I'm like, well, how, like what's going on? So, and I'm aware of what's going on, like the ropes, everything. I'm engaging. You know what I'm saying?
So is this guy got a standard crew that's doing this, or it's just
it was just
bring in different people?
No, it was honestly just people that just grew up in the neighborhood. It might be a day where, I might happen to run across somebody that I know, and we got a nice little bond or whatever. I'm fucked up, he's fucked up, and I'm like, "Hey man, you want to hit this lick?" Like, yeah, hell yeah. You know what I'm saying? Where he might just be the driver. It could be, it could be easy as that, and so like I said to you, I ended up inserting myself into the situation, in the conspiracy, as you if you want to call it what it is. And so now I find myself also going on these licks as well too. You know what I'm saying to you? And so we would always target like the establishments that were like in the cut, like out the way, like where it wasn't like high traffic areas or whatever, because we wouldn't want people to ride by or, anything like that. And we would always, wait till it was, of course, it was night time out or whatever. That's what I started doing.
What was the first place you robbed?
How
does that go? Do you guys sit down and talk about it?
No, we like the actual first place that I participated in was a place where one of my ex-girlfriends worked the pool tab.
Oh, okay.
Right? She was my ex-girlfriend. She actually worked the pool tab. And so I was familiar with how much she would make from even just working there. And this, like I said, this was well after, that I caught wind of what they were doing. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, oh man, she works at one too. And it was a perfect location because where it was at. You know what I'm saying to you? And so I'm like, man, we can go ahead and we can get this one.
Did you tell her you were going to rob her?
No, I wouldn't. I was no longer dealing with her. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was no longer dealing with her.
But if she's there when you're there, she's going to be like, Carl?
Right, no, and the crazy thing about it is I was hoping that the day that I went in there that she wasn't working in there. Yeah, you know what I'm saying to you? Again, fast forward, that was the first one that I had actually participated in.
So what? Are there 4 guys? Do you guys?
No, it was just myself and one of my other co-defendants, the one I used to call my son.
Right. And so you guys go in.
Yeah, we go in. Like I said, it was easy. Like I said, you go in there, you up your firearm. No, for the most part, everybody's gonna be in compliance. They don't want to get shot.
Yeah, it's not their money.
Right. And so and we don't we never focused on the bar. It was just specifically the gambling area, the pool tab area, because that's where the money was at. And like I said, we would go in there because most bars are the size of this room. They're not really that big. They're small. Yeah. You get what I'm saying to you? And so we would go in there. Like I said, it was a smash and grab. It was easy. 3, 4, 5 minutes tops. In and out. We get in the car and we drive off. We gone and we split the money up and we go our separate ways.
Nobody says anything. Nobody puts up.
Nobody puts up a fight. Nobody says anything. Because it was so easy, and we had convinced ourselves. I know for myself, I convinced myself that this was even easier than just selling dope. Just that fast. I kind of veered away from selling the dope. You know what I'm saying to you? I would only kind of focus and worry about selling the dope once my bankroll got a little light. You know what I'm saying? You're not trying to go grab some dope or whatever, try to bounce back or whatever to take care of the little stuff I had to take care of though. But for the most part, my mindset was the next lick. You get what I'm saying to you? That was the mindset. And so that's why I continued on. It continued on for over a course of period of time. The conspiracy was about 2 years.
How many places do you hit?
I was involved myself personally with 10.
Was there all in this general area?
We would always, like I said, it was in the surrounding areas. Okay. You had multiple different jurisdictions.
Makes me think of the movie The Town.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah,
but my top 20.
Yeah, but I was involved with 10, and then my co-defendant, the one I used to call my son, he had 32.
Jeez.
He was involved in 32.
Are you guys wearing ski masks, gloves, the whole thing?
Yeah, ski masks. Yeah, brown. What we used to call they weren't we had gloves. We used to call them brownies. Right. We used to call them back in the day. We used to call them brownies.
So this goes on. It was never an issue. Nothing.
No, it was never an issue. I mean, there might have been one time. I think there was one time where there was an older guy who tried to pick up a chair or a stool or whatever,
right,
and hit one of us with it or whatever, and we just had to grab him and just.
Plus, they're in bars.
Yeah, just try to sling them down.
Drunks in bars, they're fucking. Who knows what they'll do? You know? See, I'd be worried about the hero factor. Somebody, especially if somebody's drunk.
Yeah.
No, that you're I came in here and didn't want to have anything go wrong or have a problem, and suddenly you got some guy attacking you So this goes on. Obviously, this ends at some point.
Yeah.
Do you stop,
I had,
or do you stop, or do you get arrested?
What ended up happening was I had stopped and backed away from my co-defendant, because at the time I had got into it with a couple guys in my neighborhood who he was afraid of, and so.
What was the issue with those guys?
We had a dispute in the neighborhood where a guy, we were out somewhere, at a nightclub, and him and his buddies, they would always try to target the little, the soft dudes, the weak dudes, in the neighborhood. You might be the neighborhood DJ, they're picking, at people or whatever. And so I always grew up. I didn't like bullies. Like, you know, if you want to bully somebody, bully us. You know what I'm saying? Like you know,
Right.
so it was like, I didn't like that. So there was one night where they tried to ultimately, you know, get on somebody that I knew. And so I didn't like that, you know, because why are you picking on him? Like, pick on somebody that you know will give you everything you're looking for. You get what I'm saying to you? And so
bullies know who to pick on.
right, you know, and so, and that's how it started, you know, and so from that night, I happened to see the guy the next day, and I just got on him, you know, and I just, you know, and I just treated him like, man, you're soft, you know, like, you know, it's like, why don't you, you know, so, and it went from there where he ended up going to get a couple guys, and after that, they like jumped out on me or whatever, and took my truck from me because they had a firearm. I didn't have no firearm on me at the time. They took my truck from me. And so, you know, in my mind from there, it's on. You know what I'm saying? So we exchanged, you know, shots back and forth. One night in particular, I had an incident or a situation where they try to jump on me. You know what I'm saying? In a nightclub, but it didn't go in their favor. And so I ended up going to jail though because of, you know, this guy getting the worst end of everything. I had a pocket knife on me when I was in there. And so when he ran up, I had already seen him like looking, and so I had got the pocket knife off my hip and just like put it in my hand. And soon as he walked up, I just started stabbing him. And so I probably
in a bar or
in a nightclub.
In a nightclub.
In a nightclub. So I started stabbing him, you know, real bad. And so as I started stabbing him, like the last time I tried to stab, like the knife had kind of got stuck. I had to pull it out of him. And so, but I'm trying to run and get out the nightclub. And as I'm trying to get out the nightclub, him and his brother, they're trying to come behind me. But as soon as he come outside, he collapses. I go to jail right then and there on the spot because we had Ramsey County sheriffs that did security for the nightclub, you know, on certain nights.
Right.
And so I got arrested, but he didn't tell. So I sat down there for the little 72-hour hold or whatever, and I got out. And so, but like that next day, they seen my co-defendant, the one I used to call my son, and they chased him. He was like, you know, he kind of like copping, you know, man, I don't got nothing to do with it or whatever, you know. So from there, he stopped hanging out with me because he was afraid of them. Right. And I didn't respect that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if, you know, because if he was into it with somebody, I'm gonna stand with you, you know. But I had stopped dealing with him, you know, and that's how I, you know, drew back from ultimately being a part of that. What ended up happening was he got arrested. He got arrested for committing 2 robberies back to back. Like, he had went to one, I guess it wasn't enough money in it, and then he went to another one, and he got arrested. And so when he got arrested, he started cooperating.
He's got, what, 30, how many?
Right, but when he first got,
they only know about 2.
When he first got arrested, it was only a state case, it wasn't a federal case.
Okay.
But because he went down and he started talking, now they're like, oh, this is a group. It's a group of individuals. He came in there initially, he didn't mention me at all at first, initially. He just mentioned everybody else.
They're going to mention you.
Right. So what ended up happening was, mind you, because like I just told you, the guy who I got into it with that I had, you know, that I ended up stabbing in a nightclub, like, we're into it in the streets. You know, we're into it back and forth, like, you know, real bad. The St. Paul police, you know, they had been trying to get me just because I could say it was shots, you know, back and forth. They've been trying to get me. So my name was definitely on their radar, like definitely on their radar. He ended up telling on other guys that he committed robberies with. Once he did that, that's when they bonded the case over from state to federal.
Hey, you guys, want to let you know that this Sunday, June 21st at 7 p.m., Tom Simon and I are going to be going live. Last time that we did this, a lot of people said that they weren't notified. They didn't know that this was happening. So I'm letting you know we've already got the video thumbnail up. So you can go there, click on it. You can hit notification so you'll get notified the moment we go live. That link is in the description box right now. So make sure you go over there because once we've filmed the video, it's going to be gone. So come join us.
They ended up arresting like a couple of the guys that he had committed some of the robberies with. And once they got to the point of where'd you guys get the firearms from, that's when my name came up, but it didn't originally come up from him. And so once they heard my name, now everything changed. They went back to my co-defendant, the original person, and they said, listen, the deal that we have on the table for you is off the table unless you tell us everything you know about this guy.
Yeah, you don't get to hold back.
Right. You get what I'm saying to you? And so that's how I was ultimately brought in. I wasn't initially indicted at all. When I got arrested June 4th, 2004 on a complaint only. But the original complaint said felon in possession of a firearm. That's what the original complaint said.
Yeah.
But I had never been caught with a firearm. And so,
doesn't matter.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So, and I eventually I learned that. So, I got arrested. So that brought myself and 3 other of my co-defendants. We were all in federal custody in the county jail. So you fast forward maybe 2 months after me being arrested. That's when I was indicted. I was indicted on a superseding indictment first, where they put me on 2 of my co-defendants' indictment as an aider and abetter. You know what I'm saying to you? Because they're saying I provided the firearm. Now they arrest everybody else. So now it's a total of 6 of us. I want to say around July 2004, there was a second superseding indictment, and that's when they charged all of us. And so I sat in the county jail. I was in the local county jail. I had retained my own counsel at the time because, like I said, I'm naive, thinking that a lawyer is going to beat a federal case, which is you might as well save your money and do the time, man. Because once they get you, they already know where you're on the guide, like where your guidelines, what category you're in.
Yeah. They
know all that stuff. Like it's a waste of money. You might as well do your. If the feds come, you might as well do your time.
Yeah, you might as well get that public
defender.
Right.
Yeah, you go with the public defender because they're the ones who have the relationship built with the prosecuting attorney and stuff like that. Because even if you got to, get to a place in a space where you're going to take a plea agreement without cooperation, they probably can get you the best one possible, as opposed to you wasting your money on private counsel. So I retained counsel. I was the only one on the case at the time with a paid attorney. Of course, everybody else had attorneys from with the CJA panel, and I was fighting. We was all indicted on a conspiracy to commit Hobbs Act robbery and also 924C charges, as well as felon in possession of a firearm count. I myself had a total of 21 counts. Count 1 conspiracy, counts 2 through 10, aiding and abetting robbery, and then counts 11 through 19, aiding and abetting for the 924C convictions, and then count 20 and 21 for felon in possession of a firearm. I originally was told from my lawyer that it wasn't a federal case and that the government didn't have no jurisdiction because
are some of these like a chain of stores?
No, they were all, like I said, they were all bars that had these gambling establishments attached to it as well too.
Are the establishments
that's what
chain?
No. They were all different because like every one, like you had like, I remember like you had boosters that contributed to these different gambling establishments. You get what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
But they all were different. They were all separate. They were all different.
Okay.
And
so I am wondering also how it
was a federal case.
How it's federal.
This is how they say it's a federal case.
You know what I'm saying? Because like if you're robbing 7-Elevens, even if they're all in the same within a mile of each other, that's a chain.
Right. What their justification for this was, which in all actuality, the case wasn't a federal case, but this is where the federal government gets you.
They're making the rules.
You affect your interstate commerce.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Because the liquor sold in these establishments were not manufactured in the state of Minnesota, you affect your interstate commerce.
Yeah, that's
even if you go into a 7-Eleven, and let's say you rob a 7-Eleven, let's say you get $5. If they technically wanted to charge you with a federal offense, they could, because why? The Snicker that's in the store is not manufactured in whatever state you're in. Mm-hmm. And so that's how they justified them having jurisdiction, because their whole theory was that we depleted the funds of the establishments to be able to order goods, in the flow of interstate commerce. after my lawyer had kind of like broke everything down to me, and I, me doing my own research, I'm like, and this ain't no federal case, and then I'm young, naive. I got a little bit of money at the time, and I retained counsel, and then she also had an associate or partner that she worked with, so I had 2 lawyers. So I'm kind of feeling myself, thinking, okay, well, I'm for this big shot. I'm finna go in here with these 2 lawyers and and beat a federal case. And then you have to understand that I was never caught. So I go to trial. I'm taking it to trial. Like I said, I never was.
Is your lawyer telling you not to go to trial, or is he saying,
this
like,
is
what you want to do?
It was shitty. It was 2 females.
Okay, that's right.
They up until like the last minute, like 4 days prior to my trial, because one of the things that I had, because of course, like let me just take a step back for a second. Every co-defendant was offered a plea agreement between 19 and 22 years.
Right.
Okay. Now, mind you, outside of myself, everybody else is cooperating. Okay. So, of course, they all took the deal for 19 or 22 years, but of course, they're going to get a 5K1 and they're going to get their sentence reduced as long as they, go through whatever it is that they agreed to with the federal government.
They're praying you go to trial.
Right. And so I was offered the same exact deal, but of course, I rejected, doing any type of cooperation. And so prior to trial, I had one of my, both my lawyers actually came to see me in the county jail. And I said to her, I said, listen, I'm the only one on this case with a paid lawyer. Like, give me 10 years, I'll take it. I'm not cooperating against nobody, but give me 10 years, I'll snatch out, I'll take it. 4 days before trial, I remember, being in the unit, and it was lunchtime. And so they're like, hey, they called my name, Carlos, you need to go down to booking. I'm like, what's going on? They like, you just told us to go, you didn't go down to booking. I go down there, there's 2 U.S. Marshals. I'm like, what's up? It's like, oh yeah, they sent us up here to get you. We need to take you to the courthouse. I'm like, I need to call my lawyer. Like, I don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. They rushed me down there. And so when I get down there, of course, my lawyer, she's there. And so she's like, I got a good deal for you. I'm like, what's going on? So she's like, man, they're offering 15 years. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, I'll take it, but I want to get like a signature bond so I can spend time with my family and stuff like that before I go. They're of course, they're not going. So she's like, well, I'll go ask them or whatever. And so she went back upstairs, trying to negotiate that or whatever. She comes back down like, they're not going to do that. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I'll take the 15 years. So she's like, okay, well, the marshals are going to come get you. I'm going to take you upstairs or whatever, so you can look at some photos and stuff. I said, look at some photos. I'm like, she's like, oh yeah, the deal comes with cooperation. I said, I'm not cooperating against nobody.
They've already cooperated.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm not. But like, they knew that I knew stuff outside of that because of what my co-defendant shared with them. Like far as just, like knowing like a couple buddies who that they had sold dope and stuff like that. And one of the things that they did too was when everybody was arrested, when the feds came, they sent every co-defendant 55 photos, and there was a number they were numbered from 1 to 55 each photo, and they wanted you to write your name by anyone you knew, and that's how the co-defendants, when they proffered, also gave up information as well too. And so, of course, I received the photos, and it's literally everybody in my neighborhood, dudes that I know, and here it is. You guys don't even know the feds are on you guys. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever, like law enforcement, they're on you. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're going to pass somebody 55 photos, and you're in the photos, or your buddies are in the photos, you're looking like, what the hell? You know what I'm saying? Like, what the hell? But of course, I rejected it. I didn't do anything with it. That's what they were probably banking on. They were probably banking on me going upstairs and giving them information about dudes that I knew in the neighborhood or dudes that I knew from California and stuff like that. But I wouldn't do it. So I told her, I said, like, I'm not doing that. I said, I'll take the 15 years, but I'm taking it without cooperation. And if I have to cooperate, then we got to put 12 in the box. And so that's what ultimately happened. And so 4 days before trial, rejected the last plea offer of 15 years. And then I ended up going to trial. My trial lasted for about 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for about 4 days before they came back with a verdict.
Okay, but you're going to trial. Mm-hmm. You know that oh, these guys are all going to cooperate against you.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, what is your, like, why not just take the 19 at that point? Does it make sense? Like
I mean, like,
it's going to be much worse.
One of the things that I can say that I didn't realize until after the fact was that I could have still just pled guilty without the cooperation and then just been subjected to wherever I fell on the guidelines.
Right.
You get what I'm saying
Yes.
to you? But I didn't know anything about responsibility at that time. You get what I'm saying to you?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that I learned after, you know, the situation, just the importance of responsibility, ownership, and things of that nature. But like I said, you know, I'm young, I'm naive, I'm dumb. You know, like I said, I got a little bit of money. You know, I have this lawyer who originally telling me, you know, as soon as she comes in, it's not a federal case. That stuck with me. And then as I'm reading myself, I'm like, man, this ain't no federal case. And of course, you're going to listen to the jailhouse lawyers in the pod or whatever, you know, and say the same thing. So that stuck with me. You know what I'm saying? While I knew that they were coming in there to testify against me, I was never caught nowhere. You get what I'm saying? So I'm not thinking, you know, that I can be found guilty, you know, because like what other proof or evidence do you have of this? I got a mask on. You know what I'm saying to you? You don't have nobody. You don't have any.
And everything that everybody's hearing right now,
Yeah.
that makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
But then you do 10,
Of course.
15 years
Oh, yeah.
and you realize
Oh, yeah.
and you see so
Yeah.
many guys in there that you listen to their cases and you're like, how the fuck were you found guilty?
Yeah.
Because 6 guys that I knew sat in the jury or sat in the witness box and pointed and all of them had a similar story.
Yeah.
Maybe not perfect.
Yeah.
There may have been some inconsistencies.
Yeah.
But all of them said the same thing and they pointed at me. And even though I know that nobody could pick me out, they all knew me, but nobody could say this. I wasn't on surveillance. There was no text messages. Like I felt really good. It doesn't matter. You were indicted. There's 6
Right.
people. You clearly know each other. There's 12 people in the box. You've been indicted.
Yeah.
You're sitting in that chair. That's it.
Yeah.
And then even that to me is still worth maybe rolling the dice, except for the penalty that you get for going to trial.
Right.
Like you can think, okay, because in your heart you're thinking, you might be thinking, I don't know what you're thinking, but in your heart you may be thinking, the most I could possibly get is 20 years.
Right.
I didn't kill anybody. I didn't. It's questionable whether I was even involved.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. I'll get 20 years. But the penalty for going to trial is so severe. I know so many guys that were offered 3 years that got 20, 19,
Because
19.
they blew trial, yeah. You know, and see, for the most part, you know, like, I don't like I said, like where I'm, you know, where I am today.
But today you're a mature man.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, I don't even like, you know, it's if you look back at that time and you look back at today, right? For instance, I know the importance of accountability. I know the importance of responsibility. I know the importance of ownership. You know what I'm saying to you? Mm-hmm. That's even just like for myself, like the advice that I give people today is only you know what you were involved in. If you weren't involved, don't play with them, especially the federal government. State court is different. You know, state court, they're not convicting without evidence, with something. They like state court is different. When it comes to the federal system, like I was found guilty of 2 counts of felon in possession of a firearm. I've never been caught with a firearm a day in my life. And then you have people, I'm sure you did time with, where it's like you're on a conspiracy, you know, of, you know, 10, you know, kilos or 20, you know, 50 kilos or whatever. And it's like, here it is, you haven't been caught with a gram, you know, but because somebody comes in there and says to you, hey, well, listen, man, me and this guy, we sold, you know, X amount of drugs at, you know, at a high level every single day. And this is the amount that we sold. Now all of a sudden you add it all up and it's, you know, it's 10 kilos. You get what I'm saying to you? What's the difference from a state court and a federal system is that the sentences that they impose are trial penalties. You know, while they tell us that we have a constitutional right to a fair trial, when we exercise, they punish us for it.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying to you?
Yeah, that's like there's, you know, there's no perfect system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody's like, oh, our system's horrible. It's not horrible. We have a decent system. People are applying a lot of the rules, you know, incorrectly. When you involve any type of people, it gets fucked up. But the one thing that really bothers me about the system, because I don't really think the system is all that flawed, with the exception of the people running it. And I think
Right.
the laws are written probably pretty badly.
Right.
But the jury system, like I get it. The court system, there's a lot of checks and balances. But the penalty for just taking advantage of my constitutional rights of being able to go to a jury and have them hear my case and determine like that. That shouldn't come with a penalty that is higher than what the guidelines would give me.
Absolutely not.
And then the other thing is the way these U.S. attorneys and the probation officers apply it.
Right.
It's like, that doesn't apply to me. That doesn't. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
You were
the
found guilty. Now you're done.
The pre-sentence report comes back, and all of a sudden you have all these additional enhancements added on to it. It definitely sucks though. But that's one of the things that I think people get misconstrued. Because like even like in my situation, in my case, when the pre-sentence report came back, one of the things that it said in there is that we were all considered average participants. Here it is, like, nobody on my case got sentenced to over 10 years except myself. And when you look at that, you say to yourself, okay, well, if I'm convicted and I stand before a federal judge and the federal judge sentences me and says, okay, well, yeah, I feel like you're a danger to society, you shouldn't be on the street or whatever the case may be. Well, just 2 seconds ago, you guys offered me 15 years. You know what I'm saying? What makes me a danger to society? You want to know what makes me a danger to society? Is when I exercise my constitutional right to a fair trial. Now I'm all of a sudden a danger. Mm-hmm. But they just offered me 15 years, so why not impose that sentence? You know what I'm saying to you? So I don't know if it's because we spend taxpayers' money when we do it, but nevertheless, that's the part of the system that I feel like is unfair and I feel like is completely broken. It's because you shouldn't tell us that we have a constitutional right to a fair trial, and then when we exercise, you punish us for it. That makes no sense.
Right.
Because, like I said, if we're in a conspiracy, whether it be drugs, whether it be firearms, whether it be murder, if we're all considered to be average participants, just because I don't plead guilty, my sentence should be no different than the sentence you impose to my co-defendants. But that's the unbalance in the system.
Yeah, I forget what state it is because I interviewed a guy who was saying that if you go to trial in whatever state he was in, they cannot impose a stricter sentence than their last plea or their last offer to you or something like that. I forget what it was.
State or federal?
There's a state. Oh no,
it gotta be state.
And I forget what it was. He explained it, and it was like, wow, like that. He's like, well, lots of people go to trial.
Yeah.
He's like, because they figure, fuck it, that if that's the best I'm going to get.
Yeah.
But, and I get a penalty. There should be penalties. I get it's punishment. I get all that. But some of these sentences are just, and that's a perfect example is the whole, we'll give you 15 years.
Virginia, I think, is a state.
Oh, Virginia. Okay.
It's the only U.S. state that has actively legislated the end of the jury trial penalty.
Oh, wow.
So, but like I get exactly what you're saying is perfect. Is like, okay, if 15 years was acceptable, then how come I go to trial and I lose and now it's got to be 40 years or 50? It's like,
right. Or life.
Yeah. So go to trial.
Yeah. And I go to trial, and like I said, I'm sitting there and even just throughout the course of my trial, like, while there was definitely some truth to what was said there at trial, I sat there and had to witness two different people get on there and just completely lie from start to finish, and I could not for the life of me understand it. And it was done to protect either one of the co-defendants or protect the other co-defendant, and I just couldn't understand why are you doing this to me? I don't even I don't know you. I mean, of course, we know of each other, but I don't know you. Why are you trying to cause this harm to me? You know what I'm saying? And so that was the part that was disturbing. And it was also just disturbing to watch a group of dudes get on the stand and point the finger at that you did a lot for. I was the guy where if any one of them got, arrested, they didn't call their old lady first or their mom or their dad. They called me because they knew I was going to come bail them out. That was the bond of relationship that I had with you. If I dealt with you, And I considered you to be, somebody that was within my circle. If you needed me, I was always there. So it was definitely a tough situation. But like I said, we started trial, and it lasted for about 5 days before they sent the case to the jury. They sent the case to the jury on a Monday, and they came back with a verdict that Friday.
That's a long.
Yeah, so they deliberated for like 4 days, and for a long time, a part of me felt like if I would have testified, that I probably would have won, because here it is, you have people that are getting on the stand saying that you did this or you did that, and then you're not sitting there defending yourself. And even in thinking back now, like I remember there were a couple of young white guys on my jury, and like when the co-defendants would get up there and they would testify, I used to see them like shaking their head like in disgust, like, man, like, kind of like knowing like some of the stuff was like over exaggerated or made up. And so I don't know if it was those two guys that were holding out, but I used to always think about that. Like, man, if I'd have gone on the stand, I wonder if I'd have won, But like I say,
did you not get on the stand because they would then bring up your past?
Yeah.
Hey, this guy's been convicted
Right,
twice
yeah.
of shooting guys.
Yeah, I mean, people, the crazy thing about it is that, like I said, I had a buddy last week who just got convicted, and that was the advice that I gave his cousin to tell him, like, man, tell him he has to get on the stand. I feel like sometimes you have jurors that want to hear from the even though, and that was his fear. His fear was he didn't want them to talk about it, his state case that he's also fighting as well too, or he didn't want to, talk about the past, and that was my fear. My fear was, oh, well, I don't want them to bring up the fact that I've been in prison, before, for this shooting or that shooting. Like I didn't want that. But like I said, ultimately that was the decision that I made, and I had to live with it, And so, like I said, after them deliberating for 4 days, they came back with a verdict of guilty on all counts. I was indicted, or I was found guilty of a 21-count indictment, which was actually a separate indictment from the second superseding indictment. Was a third superseding indictment, which I was the only one on. And it was then that I didn't know at the time that's where they attached the 18 U.S.C. 3559C statute, which was the third strikes law, the federal third strikes law.
I've never heard of a federal third strike law.
Right. It's called 18 U.S.C. 39 or 3559C. Is the federal three strikes law. I was the first and only person in Minnesota history to be sentenced under the federal three strikes law, and it was done illegally.
Because you didn't even know it was.
I never even knew that I was subjected to a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. I never knew it. I didn't find out until maybe 2 days after I had been convicted, because one of my buddies that was in the county jail with me, because I used to, like, in our county jail every morning they would deliver the newspaper, for people to read the newspaper in the unit or whatever. And so my buddy, he made sure he grabbed it first before anybody could see it, and he read it and he seen it in there, because in the newspaper it said that I was subjected to a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole under the federal three strikes law. And so he slid it under my door. I was in there asleep, and when I woke up, I read it, and so I'm like, I was in shock, because I'm like, what is this? I was never made aware of it, and had I would have been made aware of it, there's no way in the world I would have went to trial. I wouldn't have cooperated, but I would have definitely pled guilty.
It's like knowing that you could potentially face the death penalty. Like they have to tell you
right,
that.
Yeah,
that's
they have to.
Part of your decision making.
Right, like they have, and that's one of the things that I fought, like after being convicted for years, is the fact that the government never filed what's called an A51 notice, which they have to.
Right.
If the federal judge has jurisdiction to impose a life sentence without the possibility of parole, the federal government has a duty and responsibility to put you on notice, to say, hey, listen,
right,
these are your priors that we consider to be qualifying prior convictions, and it then gives you the opportunity to challenge those prior convictions and to determine whether or not they're actually predicate offenses that warrants this particular type of sentence. And so they never did. The government never filed it.
Is it like a separate trial, or is
No,
it just you're able to respond?
it's just a notice that they have to include.
Okay.
And then, they have to serve myself as well as my attorney, and let them know, like, listen, these are the priors we're going to use against your, client. And they're supposed to file it before trial because, again, that'll give me the opportunity to decide whether A, to go to trial, or B, to accept a plea agreement.
Yeah. 20 years is better than life.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. I was found guilty on a 21-count indictment. And like I said to you, I found out afterwards that I was subjected to be sentenced under the federal 3 strikes law. At that point, I was myself and my lawyers. We kind of got into it a little bit because, of course, they didn't inform me of this.
Did they even know?
They were supposed to know.
Okay.
That's what they're there for. You know what I'm saying to you? I pay you my money, and as a lawyer, you have a right to, your right, is to, I pay you my money. It's your responsibility to protect my rights. So they were supposed to know. I ended up cutting ties with them. We ended up retaining another lawyer who was going to take me to sentencing and also handle my appeal. He and I communicated for maybe a few weeks before we retained him because one of my biggest things was, I didn't want him to take my money unless he was going to actually do the job that was needed. And I sat in that visitation room and I begged him. I said, man, please don't take my money, man, unless you're going to, do what you're supposed to do for me. And he assured me that he would. And so April 7th, 2006 was the day I got sentenced. I had sat in the county after I had been convicted for over a year because at that time it was taking like 9 months for the pre-sentence report to come back. What they were actually trying to do too as well was they were trying to get me to get in there and get sentenced first before they actually sentenced my other co-defendants. And of course, the recommendation from the pre-sentence report was to impose mandatory life sentences under the federal 3 strikes law. And so I go to sentencing. There was barely any room for my family to sit down. That's how many people were in there. Outside of my family, I didn't know nobody in there. You had victims. You had law enforcement. I mean, you had everybody that I felt like was coming in there to witness a modern day lynching, to say the least. That's what I thought. So,
were they also giving impact or victim
one
impact
of the victims did give an
Just
impact
one?
statement. Yeah, it was only one. It was only one of the.
Then that's what. Then
right.
There's
yeah,
no other reason for these
right.
guys.
Yeah,
to be
there was only one of the victims that came in there and gave an impact statement. Because I knew the type of sentence that I was facing, and I knew exactly what the judge was going to impose. Because she and I used to get into it, have words like when she would do certain things when I was in court, and I knew then that she was violating my rights. So I knew she didn't have she kind of like had a distaste for me, and so I told my family, I said, man, don't write one sympathy letter asking for no type of mercy or anything to the court, because she's going to do it anyway. Mm-hmm. So why waste the ink? So I stood there, and April 7th, 2006, I was sentenced to 20 life sentences. I received 240 months on count 1, counts 2 through 10 life, counts 11 through 19 life, and counts 2 through 21 life. At sentencing, I remember my lawyer informing the court that one of his arguments and position was that I was not an armed career criminal under the 922G, the felon in possession of a firearm counts. And if the judge would have took the time, which he informed her, to look at the pre-sentence report. They had a prior conviction that was in there that was not even my prior conviction. It was a buddy of mine who used my name when I was in state prison during my second prison stint. He had got pulled over and fled the police. So the charge was fleeing police in a motor vehicle charge. One of the priors that they were using to enhance my sentence based on me being considered an armed career criminal was a minor drug charge. But because the drug charge, the maximum sentence that it carried wasn't 10 years or more, it wasn't a qualifying prior conviction. Mm-hmm. And so instead of the government offering up another prior conviction, the judge took it upon her responsibility, or took it upon herself rather, to say, well, no, he has this fleeing police charge. So when I heard that, I nudged my lawyer and I say, man, I was incarcerated, you know. The actual fleeing police charge was July 13th of 2000. Mind you, I had been in state prison and wasn't released from serving 37 months until December of 2000. So there's no way I could have committed the crime.
Right.
And in the pre-sentence report, it states that I was in the Department of Corrections. But of course, the judge blew us off and she imposed a life sentence anyway, using a prior conviction that wasn't even mine. So ultimately, that was the sentence that was imposed upon myself when it was my time to speak.
Had she not done that, then you wouldn't have qualified for, not that you qualified anyway because you were never notified, it was never
Right.
part, but had she not done that, you would have also not qualified for the
Well, see, the
right?
the felon in possession of a firearm and the armed career criminal counts were different. They were separated. Like the federal 3 strikes law was applied from counts 2 through 19. It applied only to those counts.
Okay.
Okay. I remember when it came time to speak my piece, telling the judge, I said, I don't believe that what's being about to happen, I don't believe it is right. And I vowed to always fight all the way to the Supreme Court if I had to. That was one thing that I stated to the courts. But regardless of what I said, she ultimately imposed a sentence anyway. I walked out of there. My head wasn't down. I wasn't feeling sorry because I already knew walking in what was going to happen. So there was no surprise. I think the only surprise for me, as well as anybody else, was just the amount of life sentences that she imposed, because 10 of the life sentences was to run concurrent and 10 was to run consecutive. And so, when I look back, that's the type of sentence that you impose to serial
killers. Yeah.
If you remember the BTK killer, he got 10 consecutive life sentences. Here it is, you give someone who's standing in your courtroom for a non-capital offense 10 consecutive life sentences without a thought. She didn't bat an eye when she did it. And that's something that I can't understand to this day. I can't understand how anyone in that position could sit there, whether somebody's guilty or innocent, and impose that type of life sentence without making sure that it's of a constitutional basis. Aside from my lawyer having a responsibility to protect my constitutional right, the court also had a responsibility to protect my constitutional rights too. And she didn't do that. But I stand here today fully understanding the nature of everything. And so I don't have no regrets. I have no regrets other than, of course, just the harm I caused my community. That would be it for me. But if I had to do everything all over again, I still wouldn't cooperate. The only thing that I would have done different was just play guilty and say, okay, well, this is the role that I played forget what anybody else is saying or what anybody else is doing. This is the role that I played, and whatever, sentence you was going to impose based on that, then I got it coming because I wasn't innocent in the conspiracy.
Yeah.
I wasn't innocent. So that's just pretty much it. But like I said, I walked away from there, like I said, with my chest out here, held high, and then just mentally preparing to walk myself in the federal prison. But one of the things that I did for myself was I made a commitment to myself to change everything about me. Everything everything that I had attached to me that walked me into federal prison, I had to take it off. I had to take it off me. That was the commitment that I made to myself when I first entered the federal system.
Why do you say that? Because those are the things that got you in this position to begin with?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Regardless of, me sitting in a courtroom and 5 people pointing the finger at me or whatever, I put myself in that situation. And I put myself in that situation ultimately because the way that I thought and perceived things. My perception of life in general was all the way off. I walked around with that sense of entitlement. You know what I'm saying to you? Mm-hmm. I felt that I could do whatever I wanted to do, when I want to do it, and how I want to do it, when in reality, that's not what life is really about. You got to put the work in, you got to grind, you got to hustle, you got to educate yourself. And there's so many different ways to chase some money, and I think that that was missed for myself. That's why I was, I partake in everything that I did prior to that point. And that's why I was ultimately in that situation, and so that's why I made the commitment to myself, because I always told myself that if I was blessed with another opportunity to be able to walk out of prison, I had to be ready for it this time around, as opposed to it being the same similar situation that I had prior to walking out, a prison, any other time. And so that was important for me. It was important for me. After being sentenced, I sat in the county jail for maybe about 4 or 5 weeks. And they finally, U.S. Marshals finally came and got me ready for the airlift. I was sent to Oklahoma's transit center. Mm-hmm. I'm in the long hallway, and I remember a guy coming, calling my name. Like he was at the end of the hallway. He called my name. Called my last name, and so.
Is this a CO?
Yeah, this is. He was a
Marshal. U.S.
Yeah,
Marshal.
not U.S. Marshals. He was one of the guys that worked at the transit center in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Called my name. I step out the line. He's like, "Hey, you just received a hefty sentence, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, follow me." So he walked me on this long hallway, and so it's crazy because a lot of people was thinking like I was the rat. You know what I'm saying? Because they're like, why are they pulling this guy out of line? But there was guys that was with me from the county jail. And they was just like, no, dude just got slammed, with a bunch of time or whatever. And so they take me ahead of everybody, go in there, strip me out, dress me out, and put me straight in the hole.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. You're going in the hole.
Put me straight in the hole. Which I didn't know what, like I said, I didn't know what to expect the whole time. I'm thinking I'm going to get to Oklahoma, be able to order some commissary, call my family and stuff like that. But the guy told me, he was like, what ended up happening was the reason for it was because in my paperwork, they had said that I came from our Supermax in St. Paul. So I believe it was done intentionally by the U.S. Marshals. I got there on a Friday, but he told me, he said, but the beauty of it is you'll get out of here faster. So I got there Friday, and Monday, I got back. They woke me up that morning, got back on the airlift. When they flew me to Pennsylvania. And my first prison that I was sent to was USP Hazleton. They call it Misery Mountain now, where Whitey Bulger got killed at. That was the first. That was the first USP that I was sent to. So I got there. When I got there, the institution was actually on lockdown. So of course I'm getting off the bus. I don't got nothing, no hygiene or anything like that. So I go in there, of course, and the federal system is, you don't have no one-man cells, you got two-man cells. And so I was in there, they sent me in there with a guy from Virginia. And so, of course, we felt each other out. He asked me what I was in for. He told me what he was in for, stuff like that. Asked me, was I hot? Was I telling her? Or had I cooperate? I told him no. And so he just kind of just gave me, kind of broke everything down to me about paperwork and the different things like that. And so he didn't really have much himself, but the one thing he did have was he had a couple stamps to give me. And so he gave me a couple stamps. I was able to write my people, my family, let them know I had made it to where I was at, and that, to send money. Now, mind you, when you leave from the federal system, your money that doesn't automatically just go with you. It has to catch up with you, which I didn't know. So my concern when I got there was like I didn't have no money. Even though I had a fat check that I had when I was in the county jail, I didn't have no money. And so I wrote and told my family, like, yo, send me some money or whatever. And so by the time we had got off lockdown, they had sent money, but then also my money had caught up with me. I probably had like $7,000 when I left the county jail. It had caught up with me or whatever. So I was able to go to the commissary, get all the stuff that I needed or whatever. I walked in there, which of course, federal system was completely different than the state system. So just the environment was different, from cell bars to actual just doors. Two-man cells was a lot different. And so I'm pretty sure you're familiar with just how USPs are ran, I'm saying probably just from stories. I'm saying familiar
from
just
stories. Yeah.
I'm saying familiar based on stories or whatever. And so of course, you hearing about the stabbings and the different things like that. So it's like, man, you need a knife, and and so my mindset, I'm like, man, I got to get out of prison. Like, so I don't want no knife. I don't need no knife. And so when I got to where I was, there was like nobody there from Minnesota. When I tell you like nobody, there was one guy that was actually there from Minnesota. And it was funny because he was in the unit next door to me. And so I remember, I guess somebody must, because how when you get to wherever you're going, they're going to tell people, like, oh, you got a homie here, whatever, wherever you're from. And so I guess he had got word that there was somebody here from Minnesota. So he comes over. And so he introduces himself. And it was just like, he was kind of like, he was corny though, because he come up to me and he's like, hey, yeah, I'm so-and-so. Yeah, I was the first guy with a Rolls Royce, and I'm looking like, man, I just got all this time. You didn't give a fuck about you. Was the first guy with a Rolls Royce in St. Paul. Like, I don't give a fuck about that shit. So that just turned me off. So he and we didn't even, after that one encounter, I didn't even really deal with him. And so when I walked in, like I said to you, there was nobody there. So you know how in the federal system they got like the cars and stuff like that. You run with who you with, or not who you with, but where you from, or whatever. And so I just hung out with the Virginia guys because that's where my roommate was from. My cellie was from Virginia. So I got cool with the Virginia dudes, showed them my paperwork, and then my main focus was the law library. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I didn't indulge in nothing. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I just pretty much just did my own thing, you know what I'm saying? Like worked out and just stayed on man time, worked out, stayed in the law library, just read and educate myself.
Was your second lawyer the one that came to you and said he was going to appeal the case? Mm-hmm. Did he start the appeal process?
Yeah, he had filed a notice to file our direct appeal. But also, if you remember too, like I said to you, even before sentencing, he had a responsibility to look at the pre-sentence report as well too, and to understand that they never filed no A51 notice, and that my prior convictions probably didn't qualify for the sentence that was about to be imposed, which he missed the mark. He didn't do what he was supposed to do though. But it was kind of it was frustrating when I got there because prior to me getting there, he and I used to communicate every day on the phone. But when I got to prison, I never ever spoke to him ever again. He never answered the phone ever again. I would write letters. I would send case law to him, telling him, like, hey, this is what I want done. And so months had went by, of me just sending letters. Like I said, I tried to, reach him on the phone. He never took none of my calls anymore. Like, I believe his wife was his secretary. Of course, they were screening my calls. Like, I never, ever had a conversation with this guy after I left the county jail. And so He filed my direct appeal. I lost. Of course, they affirmed my conviction. And so after they affirmed my conviction, that's when he and I had a phone conversation. Now he's saying to me he wants more money to file a writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court. And I'm like, well, hold on. We had an agreement for $25,000 for you to take me all the way to my whole appeal. Like, oh, no, that's not how it works or whatever. And so we never gave him any more money for him to do that. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up paying one of the paralegals that worked in the law library to file my writ of certiorari, which of course they didn't grant the writ or whatever. And so, but from there, I didn't lose no hope though. I had a real good support system. At the time, my ex, she was still there. She used to drive to West Virginia every month to see me, 17 and a half hours to visit me, sometimes, twice a month, Like I said, my main focus was just continuing to just educate myself and to continue to fight and just stay out the way, And so one of the things that I did was I programmed a lot. Whatever programs they had to offer, I would take them from. At that institution, I had I did public speaking, anger management, critical thinking. I took a class to become a referee, to referee basketball games. And I just worked out, man. That was my main focus, and I just, then I maintained my job in there as well, too. So I did time up there for about nearly 2 years. But one of my other goals was to get closer to home. That was big for me because I didn't want to, keep having her drive 17 and a half hours to drive down there to see me. So right. I wanted to kind of make it a little bit easier on her, for her to be able to bring my mother, bring my kids to see me and stuff like that. And so I put in for the Life Connection program, but they only have one U.S. penitentiary who offered it. And because the amount of time that I had, of course, and where my points was at, I wasn't eligible to go to a medium or a lower level security facility at the time.
What's the Life? What is that? I've never even heard of that.
What is what?
The use of the Life.
The Life Connection program. It's a faith-based program.
Okay.
That the Bureau of Prisons offers, where they have every different denomination, whatever it is, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, whether you're a Hebrew Israelite, if you practice, what is it? If you worship Satan, whatever it is, they offer it.
Wiccans or
something. Whatever it is, they offer it.
Yeah.
And it was in a U.S. penitentiary, but they had their own housing unit separate from everybody else in the yard. You still have access to every single thing, and you interact with the other inmates there, but you had everything just to yourself in there. So I applied for that. Went and did the orientation. And then the chaplain, they put me in for it. And the regent accepted it and designated me to go to USP Terre Haute in Indiana. And so as I waited to be transferred, I was there when they had their first murder in USP Terre. I'm not Terre Haute, but in USP Hills. I was there when they had their first murder because the penitentiary was actually new. It had only been there for not even, when I got there, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. When I first got there, it was, as far as doing time, what everybody else would tell you is it was sweet. Like the warden there, he was soft. Like we used to get locked down for fights, stuff like that. Like we're getting the food they was feeding us. Like they was bringing us stuff out of commissary. You got sodas, you got M&Ms, you got Snickers, and you getting big sandwiches warmed up. Like it was just like orange juice for breakfast in the morning. Like it was just crazy. And so they ended up getting rid of him because he was too soft. And so I remember they brought in this other warden, man. I'll never forget his name, man. Joe Driver. That was his name. He wasn't playing. He came there after the first murder, locked the institution down. I promise you they turned the heat off in there, and fed us bologna sandwiches, sack lunches, the entire lockdown. And prior to that, like whenever the other guy was there, he used to keep the TVs on and everything. And so when the other warden came, he shut the TVs off, all that stuff. Like we was in there We was in there messed up, but I got accepted, got designated to go to Terre Haute. When I got there, it was at least about 5 or 6 guys that I actually grew up with in my neighborhood that I knew personally. Everybody had life. And so I kind of felt a little sense of relief, because I was closer to home, which was still a little distance, but I was around people that I actually personally knew. And so my focus at that institution was the same focus that I had maintained when I was in USP Hazleton, which was to stay in the law library, continuing to fight to try to, vacate and overturn my conviction and sentence.
Had you been denied?
Yeah, I had
by
been.
This point,
I had been denied. Like I said to you again, like my direct appeal, and I got denied my writ of cert.
right?
And at this point now, the next phase from that would be the 2255, which is the habeas corpus. And so, but I still had some time before before we had to actually file the habeas corpus motion. So I wasn't in no rush. I had the same plan that I had when I was in Hazleton, which was the program. Like I said, Life Connection program was an 18-month faith-based program. It was an 18-month program. And one of the bonuses that they offer, that they tell you, is that after completion of the program, they'll send you to any medium facility that you want to go to. And so that was also...
Is that true? Or
it's not, because this is the thing. When you have a life sentence, or when you have 50, 60, whatever years,
there's only so much they can do.
They generally want you to do at least 10 years behind the wall before they will allow you to go to a medium facility. But they've made exceptions where, you have some dudes that might do 7 or 8 years behind the wall, and then they'll send them or whatever. But of course, in my case, because of the amount of time that I had, it was looking like I was going to have to do the whole 10, which ultimately is what I had to ultimately do. So I ended up doing about 4 years there. I just did the same thing that I did at any other at the institution prior to that, which was program, workout, stay out the way, and just to continue to educate myself and stay in the law library. I had took maybe about 15 programs that they had offered while I was there. And it was there when my mother passed away. That was the prison I was in when my mother passed away. My mother had been battling and dealing with cancer for years prior to me even getting locked up. She had overcame breast cancer, but then, of course, fast forward years later, the cancer came back, it spread or whatever, and she ended up having pancreatic cancer in her stomach. Just being in that situation and not being able to be there with my mother during her last days was tough. It was real tough. I remember the institution being on lockdown. And prior to us being on lockdown, my mother had got rushed to the hospital because she was bleeding internally, and they didn't know where it was coming from to stop it. So I had communicated and spoke with my mother a few times on the phone, but then they ended up locking the institution down. The last time I spoke to my mother, they found out where the bleeding was coming from, and they stopped it, and they ended up releasing my mother from the hospital. Well, while we were locked down in the institution, my mother had passed away. I was in the cell. I was asleep, and my roommate woke me up, and he's like, "Hey, man, the CO's at the door with the chaplain." And I didn't know absolutely like the whole dynamic of if the chaplain. I didn't know nothing about that. Like, this is bad news. I was completely naive, to this. And so they're like, "Well, we need you to, cuff up or whatever." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I get myself together, wash my face, brush my teeth and stuff. And so, I put my hands through the chute. They cuff me up. And so they don't say anything to me. Like, the chaplain doesn't say anything to me initially. Now, mind you, there have been guys that have been there for years and been down, and they knew what was going on, but I didn't know what was going on. And so as I'm walking down the stairs in the unit, I just can remember seeing the look on some of the older guys' faces because they knew what this was. Yeah. And so we ended up walking through the door, and we're walking in the hallway, and the chaplain waits till we get to the end of the hallway. And that's when he tells me, he says, "Man, your mother passed away." And initially, it didn't really register to me, like my mother passed away, like, you know, 'cause I just spoke to her, you know? And so he takes me to his office, and he, you know, of course, he gives me the free phone. He's like, man, you know, I'll call your family. And so the first person I called was, I had called my ex, you know, and I talked to her. And so, but my aunt had told her, like, no, like, make sure he calls me first, my Aunt Gwinder. And so when I called her, she was like, just call your auntie first. So I called my aunt. So I spoke to my aunt on the phone and stuff like that. And, you know, my aunt, she's a very spiritual woman. And so she and I, we were on the phone, we spoke. And like, I didn't cry. You know, like I didn't cry because, like I said to you, I'm still, it just didn't really register that my mom was actually gone. And so I probably sat down in the chaplain's office about 3 hours. You know, he just let me sit in there for like 3 hours, you know, and just, you know, talking to my aunt and then also talking to my ex at the time too. And then finally just said, okay, you know, I'm ready to go. And so I go back, you know, and it just felt like that the walk back, man, was just so long, you know. It was just so long because there was so many different things playing in my head and playing in my mind, like, because, you know, when my mother, when the cancer first came back and it spread, they told us that she was in bad shape and that the people that they had been getting in her condition, they haven't been able to keep alive longer than 90 days. This was in 2001 when they told us this. My mother didn't pass away until 2008. So this entire time I had been naive to what cancer could actually do to somebody. And so when I got back to my cell, I just went straight to sleep. I didn't cry or anything, I just went straight to sleep.
It's probably just the anxiety.
Right, yeah,
and stress,
I just
exhausting.
You know, right, I just went straight to sleep. The chaplain would come and get me every day to take me to the phone. We were still in lockdown, but he would come get me every single day and to give me the free phone. It wasn't until after we got off lockdown that it actually fully hit me. And it was because when we got off lockdown, I remember going to the computer and checking the computer, and I seen somebody that sent me some money. It was my mother. And so when I seen that, that's when it hit me, and that's when I broke down, you know, and that's when I actually cried. And so for a long time, I didn't have no appetite. I couldn't eat, you know, I couldn't eat because I was devastated. Being in that type of situation, or any type of situation for that matter, you know, especially if you have a relationship with your mother, if everybody else was to leave me while being in that situation, the one person I knew I would always be able to count on would be my mother, and she was no longer there. You know what I'm saying to you? So she was the person who I felt like was the glue to everything, just because my mother would be the person would be able to hold people accountable, and she was no longer there. So that was the only time throughout my incarceration where I felt there was a split second where I felt suicidal, because I'm questioning so many different things. I'm saying to myself, like, damn, like, my mom's not here. Like, would anybody care if I was gone? And I wrote my first book called Demonstrate Your Power because of the death of my mother. That was like my therapy. What I ended up doing after about a month of her passing was I journaled every day. You know, I would wait till we locked in at night. I would wait until like my roommate went to sleep, and I would wait till when it was real quiet, I would just journal whatever thoughts, whatever it is I was feeling, I would just write about it. And I did it for 90 days. And then after that, I kind of came out of it. You know, I came out of it and having to accept, you know, my mother no longer being here, and knowing that I had to push forward and move forward without her. And so, like I said to you, after that, I ended up, you know, putting together, my first book, which was Demonstrate Your Power. And I just vowed to make sure that I didn't lose sight, of my focus and my destination, which was ultimately to try to walk out of prison. So it made me go a little bit harder, with the legal stuff. It made me go a little bit harder. I always filed stuff to the court, like whether I got denied or not, and I got denied so many different times that it just didn't make any sense. So after the death of my mother, we're reaching that time frame where I have to have my 2255, my habeas corpus in. We had money, for me to hire another lawyer, and I was going to, I had told my aunt that I wanted another lawyer. And so my aunt Gwenda, I remember talking to her on the phone, and she said, we can definitely hire another lawyer if that's what you want. She said, but you're no fool. She said, when you call this phone every day and I hear you talking about that case, she said, you talk about that case like you a lawyer. Mm-hmm. She said, nobody knows that case better than you do. She said, stick with it, stay in the law library, and just fight. She said, but I'll do whatever you want me to do, though. And so, it registered to me, and I said, you know what, you're right. Because nobody's going to maintain the same type of passion that I have.
Right.
And so there was a lawyer who was actually in the program with me, the Life Connection program, but he was like a civil lawyer. And so his name was Mr. Johnson. And so he used to always help people in the law library. And so one of the things that I did once I got there and kind of going a little bit harder when it came to the legal stuff was I just always stayed around and I listened, I kept my sponge out, and so those people that had been down for a long time, I just listened to them. I learned how to properly research cases. I learned how to break down case law and how to read it and interpret it, and then also understanding the rules of the court. And so he and I worked together, myself and Mr. Johnson, to file my 2255. After a few weeks, we got it prepared. We got everything, the arguments together, and I got it typed up. And so we filed it.
How many years you been locked up?
I had been locked up at that time when I filed my 2255. I had been locked up 5 years. I've been locked up a total of 5 years. Now, the rules, how it goes when you file 2255 is I file, the government responds, and then I file my reply, okay? I file my motion to the court. The government files. The judge denies it. She denies it.
Right.
But the rules don't say that. You have to give me time to reply first.
Right.
So, mind you, I don't know the rules, how it goes yet. But I know once I got the denial, I go to Mr. Johnson like, hey, my motion was denied. So he's like, how the fuck they do that? They didn't even give us time to reply, and they have to. So he goes back and he shows me the rule where the court has to give me opportunity. So now I'm like, oh, she really has it out for me because you already had your mind made up. You know what I'm saying to you? Mm-hmm. You didn't wait. She didn't wait. She didn't even wait a week and denied it. We're talking about a 21 count indictment. We're talking about somebody sitting here with multiple life sentences. You mean to tell me you're not going to take your time to really go through it? And so even at that time, I didn't know that the government had to file an 851 notice. Mr. Johnson knew it though. Mm-hmm. And so he made sure that he put that argument in my 2255. So what happened was once I filed a motion, the court said, hey, you got to give me an opportunity to reply. She said, oh yeah, go ahead and reply.
So you reply, right? And then she denies
But you already denied it already, so
yeah.
You already have your mind made up. So of course we do our due diligence, and we file the motion. And so we filed the motion, and what does she do? Instead of, mind you just took less than a week last time and denied it. So what you do now is now you sit on it to make it seem as if you're really reviewing it. She sits on it for about 4 months and then denies it. So now I'm sitting there looking, and at this point too, like my ex, she's losing the fight in her. You know, because at first she was gun ho and like we're fighting to the death and all that stuff, and so
It's been 5 years,
right, you know, and so she's losing the fight in her. That was another tough decision that I had to make, which was me releasing her and not being selfish and trying to hold on to her because, you know, ultimately she had her own desires of her heart. And it was a tough situation to be in because she had done so much for me. You know, like when nobody else would do anything, she was the person that would do it, you know, and she was the one who spent nearly $60,000 helping me fight the federal government. You know, and so to lose my mother and then to also lose the other rock, it was tough. But thank God, I can tell you, I was blessed to have an amazing support system of even just friends that I can call on. You know, if I needed anything, whenever I needed anything, I could call on them. Family, some family members, my brother, stuff like that. My Aunt Gwenda and my cousin Audra, they did a lot for me. So after the denial of my 2255 motion, I didn't lose my fight in me. You know, I just was trying to figure out, okay, well, like what's next? You know, and of course after you do that, you got to file a motion to the Court of Appeals asking for a certificate of appealability, which hardly ever gets granted.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying, which is another tough hurdle that you have to endure. And so, but of course, I mean, I have no choice but to do my due diligence. And so I did it. Of course, that was denied. But one of the things that Mr. Johnson had enlightened me on was that the court failed to adjudicate 4 of my claims that I filed in my 2255, and the court is supposed to. And so for years, I was arguing that, trying to get the court to adjudicate these claims so that I could appeal them. But she would always deny it. She wouldn't even address it, which legally she was supposed to. And one of the main ones was the fact that the government did not file an A51 notice, therefore giving the court jurisdiction to impose a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. So motion after motion, denial after denial, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm going through. But I continue to program, I continue to stay out the way, I continue to educate myself. And I have reached a point where I want to say I got to about 8 years after being incarcerated, about 8 years. We put in to try to get me to a lower level security facility in Wisconsin, but the region denied it. And so after the region denied my motion, my case manager recommended that I go to the SMOOTH, not the SMOOTH program, but the work cadre, to become a worker at the work cadre to help run the SMOOTH program. And so, because he was saying, if I go up there and I do that after 18 months, then he's saying, I can guarantee you they'll put you in to a lower level security facility. So I'm like, all right, well, go ahead, put me in for it.
You're basically at 10 years at that
right.
point.
So I go up there. I go to Lewisburg. I go through the whole transit again, where I go through Oklahoma, and they fly me to Pennsylvania, and I go to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. But I go up there, I get stuck up there for 4 years.
Why? Because
when we put in to after the 18 months, they denied me again. You know, so I'm still stuck up there. So mind you, here it is. I'm in the SMOOTH program, or it's the SMOOTH program, but I'm a worker. Mm-hmm. It's called the work cadre, where they only had 2 units open. Every other unit is on 23-1 or locked down. And that's at the time where they were sending like all the considered violent offenders or people that they felt was a real threat to security.
Right.
That's where they were housed at. And so I go up there, you know, I meet another guy up there who was real versed into the law. His name was Tommy Walker, real good dude, which he just got out. He had 3 life sentences. He gave his time back after like 20-something years. He was somebody who taught the legal research class, where he would teach people how to properly research cases and stuff like that. So what did I do? I sat up under him and I listened, you know. And so I continue to read case law. I continue to try to find my way into the courts where the court would, not be able to deny my motions and continue to hear me. I did like 4 years up there. Every motion I filed while up there, I got denied. Every single motion I filed when I was in Lewisburg got denied. So after about 4 years, now mind you, the prison up there, that was the first place that I actually where they had weights and stuff like that. So I was able to, hit the weight pile, and things like that. The time there was different than any other prison that I had been, any other USP that I had been to prior to it was because I didn't have to necessarily be around so many different people. Everybody there had the same agenda, which was to stay out the way, stay out of trouble. So there was no violence, there was no stabbings, there was no killings or nothing like that. I'd have to experience that stuff. There was only two units open, and we had access to the entire compound. But so we finally get to the 4-year threshold of me being there, and they put me in again to go to a lower level security facility, and it got granted. So they designated me to Pekin, Illinois. And so I go to Pekin, Illinois, go through the whole process again where I got to go through Oklahoma to transfer center. And when I get there, it's the same routine, Get to the law library, continue to educate yourself, and just stay out the way. But I'm closer now, so now I'm getting more visits. I'm able to see family, I'm able to see friends, which was truly a blessing. I continued to write books when I was there, and that's where I was housed with an older guy from my way, who has been incarcerated now for 37 years for his first offense.
What was that?
And his name is Ralph Duke. He was a known kingpin in our neighborhood, real big time kingpin in our neighborhood, who was sentenced to life. All of his other co-defendants on the case are out, except him. And he's like, when I tell you, he's in his 70s. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, there's no benefit to keeping him.
What are we doing here? You see, like I was in when Obama was releasing a lot of people, on clemency. Donald Trump, when he released people on clemency, and it's just like, how do you guys forget about him? Like, how do you forget about him? Like, he's been incarcerated now for 37 years. Are
there deaths on his case?
No, it's not. It's nothing but drugs. Like if you look him, like if you look up his case, man, like his name is Ralph Plukey Duke. Like, it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And so, but I was fortunate enough to be around him, and he also was someone who knew the law as well too. And actually, when I was there, he got granted a 2241 motion in the District of Illinois, and they sent him back to get resentenced. And so everybody thought he was going home. He thought he was going home. He gave his stuff away and everything. And so he goes back down to court, man, and the judge told him, man, that when I gave you a life sentence the first time, I meant that. I gave you a life sentence for you to die in jail. And so, unfortunately, he was resentenced to life all over again.
You usually get the judge switch at that point. You can usually apply to say, "Hey, you didn't send me back to get the same time."
Right. It wasn't. It was a different judge in a different district because he got a 2241 granted. Like, a 2241 is you file a motion in a district of confinement.
Right.
And he was the one, and that judge basically agreed and said that he should be resentenced, and that, of course, if it was up to him, he probably would have let him go. But he couldn't. He had to send him back to get resentenced in front of the sentencing judge. And so I think at this point, it's not even about getting a judge switch. I just think it's about people advocating for somebody like that. You know what I'm saying? Like people need to act. Like, when you look at what Donald Trump is doing, and like, he just commuted Larry Hoover's sentence. You know what I'm saying? On his federal sentence. And so it's just like, of course, because he's the same way where he's been locked up all these years. Like he's an old guy now.
Well, so part of the problem is that people age out of a lot of people will age out of crime, right? They just will. So if you're 60 or 70 years old and you were sentenced to your 30s and now you're 65, like you know what I'm saying? You're no danger.
No,
like so, it's
there's
just
no way. There's no way he's a danger. He got convicted in 1989.
Yeah.
You know, that's when Ralph Duke got convicted. He got convicted in 1989.
But see, like, and how old are you? You're almost 50, right?
Yeah, I'll be 50 in November.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, you probably look back on yourself and the things that you did back then and think, "Wow, what the fuck was I?
What was I thinking? Absolutely. Like every day, like like I catch myself all the time, just sitting back, just being grateful for a second opportunity just to breathe the different air that's out here. Mm-hmm. Even with me feeling, great and feeling the way that I feel, it's like you got to turn around and you got to look at the people that you left behind you. But the one thing that I can say is that I met at least 50 people that had life, at least 50 people. And when I tell you at least about 46 of the people that I sat with and had life, everybody's out because they got their convictions overturned or through clemency. But then you have those number of people that's still in there as well too, and he's one of them, And so I know for myself, a part of my journey is just being able to share my story, but also while being able to share my story, being able to advocate for somebody like that. Because he doesn't deserve to be in prison anymore after doing 37 years, and you look up and all of your other co-defendants are released and been home and been out of custody for years. But I say that to say that when I met him, he had so much information to give me that I used. And I'm grateful for it. You get what I'm saying to you? But that's what led me to keep going and to keep fighting and to keep striving. You get what I'm saying to you? Because when you look at what happened to me, you got to scratch your head sometimes, and because the first thing you're going to think of is like, okay, well, where the bodies at?
Right.
You give somebody all this time, like, where the body's at? Like I said, I stayed out the way. I programmed, I did everything that I could, and like I said, but the whole time I was there, up until 2016 was the first sigh of relief that I had got from the court.
Judge retired?
No. There was a case that had come down called United States versus Johnson from the Supreme Court.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
right.
A bunch of people getting out on
United States versus Johnson. And so remember what I told you when I said to you that they used a prior conviction that was not my prior conviction for the fleeing police in a motor vehicle.
Right. And his was a structure, right? His was a structure he had burglarized that they said was...
No. The fleeing police in a motor vehicle was a guy who I was incarcerated.
No, not you. No. I was talking about Johnson.
Oh, yeah, Johnson. Yeah, that's what it was.
They used a case where they said it was a burglary, but really it was a garage.
Right, yeah, absolutely, right.
Walked into a garage and I thought it wasn't a burglary.
And it wasn't a crime of violence.
Right, and they used it to enhance it.
Right, okay. Exactly. That was my way in. And so I go in there and I argue counts 20 and 21 saying, hey, I'm not an armed career criminal because this fleeing police in a motor vehicle is no longer to be considered a crime of violence, right. A, but B, it's also not even mine.
Right.
And so when I filed the motion, the government automatically concedes. They concede right away, but this is the thing, though. Part of my argument when I filed my motion pro se was, hey, you have to re-sentence me and you have to redo the pre-sentence report because you have prior convictions in you have a prior conviction in the pre-sentence report that I have a criminal history point for that's not even mine, so you have to correct the record. So what does the judge do? She acknowledges everything except that. You know what I'm saying? She acknowledges, she doesn't, all she does is vacates my sentence through the mail, resentences me to 10 years because the government conceded that, he's not an armed career criminal, I'll just give him 10 years. As opposed to following the legal structure and remanding me back, bringing me back to court, resentencing me, recorrecting the record and resentencing me. She didn't do it. So now I'm also fighting that. Now I'm fighting, hey, hold on, you have to vacate this and we have to have a whole resentencing.
Right. When you're saying 10 years, most people think, oh shit, he should go home. He's been locked in. That's just the one.
That was counts 20 and 21, but I still got life on counts 20 through 19.
Right. Okay.
And I still have 10 consecutively running from 11 through 19.
Right.
You get what I'm saying to you? So,
but if you could go back,
if I can go, but that's the thing. See, because my whole strategy at that point was to go back. Because once I go back, now I get all of my rights back. Now all of the things that have changed when it comes to the law, I can apply. Which, if you remember, the case.
Is it Pepper?
No. The Laughter case, Laughter and Fry.
Okay.
Where you can argue against ineffective assistance of counsel, under the Sixth Amendment. That was something that because that case dealt with if your lawyer failed to inform you of a plea agreement that the courts.
Okay, I remember.
Right,
this.
that the courts offered to you, then that would be ineffective assistance of counsel, which they would have to bring you all the way back to the negotiation stages.
Right.
So my strategy was to
vacate everything then.
Right. So my strategy was to go back to sentencing because now I would get all of my appeal rights back. Direct appeal, writ of cert, and also another crack at another 2255. So that was my strategy.
Right.
So, but she blew past it. She granted the motion for the counts 20 and 21, resentenced me to 10 years, but now here it is, I'm still stuck with, multiple life sentences,
Well, she obviously did that. She knows what she's doing.
Exactly.
She's just throwing hurdles.
You're right. Exactly. And so, but again, like I said, it didn't deter me. And I knew that's what it was designed to do, but it didn't deter me. I stuck with it. The one thing that I understand about the federal system and the reason why judges can get away with stuff like this is because there's no accountability for them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying to you? When you have something that rises to this level, there should be some type of accountability for you. But because there is no accountability other than, okay, well, we'll correct your sentence and that's it.
Well, there's a it's funny, Ephraim Deveroli, which is a guy, I wrote his memoir in prison. He's the guy from, I don't know if you probably didn't see it, but there's a movie called War Dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the guy Jonah Hill plays is Ephraim Deveroli. I wrote his, I was locked up with him. And I remember he said, he didn't say a lot of good things.
Right.
But he did, remember when he said this to me, I thought, wow. He said, they can do anything they want, the government can do anything they want to you as long as they give you a system to rectify it, to correct it.
Right.
He said, because then they can do it and you go, hey, well, that's not fair. And they go, oh, well, if you have a problem with it, you can appeal it and then you can do this. And he said, the fact is, if they give you 5 years and then you have a problem, hey, that's not right. You did that. That was illegal. Well, then you can go through the appeal. He doesn't think about it. He said, it'll take you 5 or 10 years to get through it. Yeah. He said, but we allow this to happen because they've given us a system that allows us to correct it.
Right.
But it takes that. But the problem is the punishment is the time.
Absolutely.
And I just remember thinking, he's like, that's why they get away with it. He said, because they've also created a system. He said, but that system is run by them.
Right. It absolutely is.
And I was like, yeah, that's absolutely. He's like, and that's why he said, as citizens, allow them to do these things. He said, not realizing you're also now asking the same person that violated your rights.
Yeah, to grant something for you.
Right.
Yeah. And the funniest thing, well, I mean, we'll get to that though. We'll get to that though.
So you were saying something happened after the judge granted. You said, but something happened, and then
something happened in the institution that I was in where I ended up getting transferred because I was involved in a situation where I was like at the wrong place at the wrong time type of deal. And I ultimately got shipped. Myself and 3 other individuals got shipped from the prison. and they sent me to Leavenworth, Kentucky, which I was pissed off about that because it was behind the wall again. You know, I had fought so hard to be able to see some trees and some cars, you know, riding by or whatever it is that when they designated me there, because they considered it to be a medium, facility. Like, no, this is a USP. Like Leavenworth is a USP.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care I don't care if you call it a low. Yeah. It's a USP.
What do they downgrade it from? Like Atlanta, it was a pen. Now it's a medium. It's a medium. It's got fucking 30-foot walls around it.
And that's the exact same thing, you know, when it comes to Leavenworth. So I was in Leavenworth. I was only in Leavenworth for like 10 months, and then I, you know, finagled my way up out of there because I didn't want to be there. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of was like that. I still program and stay focused, but that stint was just so fast that there really isn't any story from there, you know. Right. So, but I left from there and I ended up going to Manchester, Kentucky. When I got there in 2019. You know, mind you, at this time I had been locked up, you know, over 15 years almost, you know, close to 15 years at this particular time. And so my whole focus and goal at that point was to try to get my 2255 rights back.
Right.
That was my whole focus. So, of course, I stayed in the law library and I kept filing stuff to the courts. But everything I'm filing is getting denied, of course. Even the stuff to the Court of Appeals is getting denied. But I just refused to just stop there because I just felt like that's what it was designed for. I think each denial was designed for me to give up. But there was no way I could. So after being there for about a year, that's when the pandemic hit. You know, we had been getting, you know, seeing the news and they were talking about the pandemic and things like that. And so I ended up getting my 2255 rights back, right? And so now at this time, there was a case that come down called United States versus Davis, okay, which is dealing with 924C convictions as it relates to the government not being able to charge a 924C conviction unless it's your actual second one, where you have to be convicted for the first one, get out, commit another crime, and then you will be subjected to the consecutive sentence. And then also dealing with them not being able to impose it if the predicate offense is not considered to be a crime of violence. Okay? So that was a huge case that had come down. And so
I was out by this point.
Right.
So I've never heard about this.
So unbeknownst to myself, you know, my case was being reviewed by the Federal Defender's Office in the District of Minnesota because of the 924, because of the United States versus Davis case.
Okay, so they were. I'm assuming this is what happened because with the Johnson case, a lot of time they were just sometimes the inmates are sitting in prison, mm-hmm. and they would go through the government would go through
a list of names
that they thought it may apply to these
eligible,
guys,
right?
And then they give it to what the public defender's office.
Yeah. See,
they review it.
Yeah, see how what it is that
because these guys would get letters and be like,
"You're right." That's the thing. Like, see, what it is like, you know, being in the system, like there's a database. Mm-hmm. Whatever statute you're locked up under, there's a list of names.
Yeah.
And so whenever the Sentencing Commission or the Supreme Court changes the law, there's a list of names that, like you said, that may potentially be granted relief.
Right. Doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Be eligible.
For sure.
They may be eligible for relief, right? And so, like I said, my name was on this list,
right?
Which I didn't know. My focus was me, you know, arguing my 22v5 motion, Laughter versus Cooper, Missouri versus Fry, the ineffective assistance of counsel aspect of it, as well as the court not having jurisdiction because of the government not filing an A51 notice. I knew that they were going to lock the Bureau of Prisons down during this time, so I was like rushing to try to get it in because, like I said, we're watching the news and they keep talking about this, and how you got to quarantine and how you got to social distance, how you got to wear these masks and things like that. And so by the grace of God, I got it in there. And it was like 2 days after I sent it off in the mail and actually got it done. They locked the Federal Bureau of Prisons down, you know? And so I'm sitting in there and I'm like, but I'm grateful to this end. And so after about a month being locked down and having a quarantine and stuff like that, I remember going to the kitchen, you know, the chow hall they call it, because like how they had it set up during the pandemic was we couldn't be around each other, so you couldn't eat in the mess hall anymore. But you could, they called it grab and go, where they call your unit, you go up to the kitchen, grab your little bag, grab whatever, then just walk back to your unit, and then you got to just eat in your room. Mm-hmm. So as I'm walking out there, the unit manager, she stops me. Her name is Miss Ely. She stops me, and she's like, "Hey, I got a call from a lawyer. I need to set up a legal call with you." So I'm like, "Okay." So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, man, they're probably about to grant me an evidentiary hearing for the 2255 motion that I filed. I'm not thinking of anything else other than that. So I'm like, okay, fine. So the next day she set up the call. So when she set up the call, there was a lawyer by the name of Keela, which now he's a Court of Appeals judge in the District of Minnesota, and so for the State Court of Appeals. So I spoke on the phone with him, and he was the one who actually informed me of something that I never knew and that I had missed after all these years. And even the first two lawyers, my Court of Appeals lawyer, or my appeals lawyer, and even every jailhouse lawyer missed. He was the one that discovered that my prior convictions were never qualifying prior convictions for me to be sentenced under the federal 3 strikes law. And so at that point, for 16 and a half years, I had been serving an illegal sentence. My predicate offenses were not qualifying priors because in order for you to be subjected to life without the possibility of parole under the federal 3 strikes law, you have to have 2 prior convictions of either a serious drug offense or a crime of violence, but both of them have to be punishable by 10 years or more. So while I had like a minor drug offense, or even a case that was considered to be a crime of violence, they were not punishable by 10 years or more. They were only punishable by 7 years. They had to be 10. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, my sentence was illegal. So from the time that I was sentenced to every day that I served after that, I was serving an illegal sentence the entire time. And so he was the one who told me that he could get my sentence vacated and that he wanted to represent me to do such.
And this is after he was just reviewing it?
After he reviewed it, after he reviewed me being under the United States versus Davis case. Yeah. Because I have, mind you, from counts 11 through 19, those are all 924C convictions. Right. Because what they're saying is that, okay, for the 10 of the robberies that he was involved in, there was a firearm. Mm-hmm. So therefore, the firearm is attached to each count. You get what I'm saying to you? So that's why that's how it ultimately ended up being, what it was. But so here it was. They were reviewing my case because the predicate offense of aiding and abetting robbery is not considered to be a crime of violence. Right. So therefore, counts 11 through 19 shouldn't be there. You get what I'm saying to you? Yeah. And so he was the one who, during the course of his review of my case and actually properly researching my case, discovered that my predicate offenses from the very beginning were not qualifying priors for me to be sentenced under the federal 3 strikes law. So he had informed me of it, and he said that he wanted to represent me. And so at first I was a little hesitant because I'm saying to myself, like, I kind of at that point I didn't really trust lawyers, because we had spent like nearly $60,000, trying to fight. And so I'm like, well, let me think about it, And so, no, did he laugh? Right. Did he what do you think about it? No, he didn't. Like Miss Ely, the unit manager who was in there, she looked at me like, what is there to think about? Yeah. He's not asking for no money. and the man's telling you can get your sentence vacated.
Right.
So when she gave me the look, I kind of woke up and was like, you know what? I'm like, yeah, are you right? So he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna send you some paperwork in the mail. I need you to sign it or whatever, get me on board. And then she interjected and was like, well, no, hold on. I'm gonna give you my fax number, just fax it to him. So she ended up giving him the fax number, he faxed it, I signed it. And then after that,
you had a good counselor.
right. So after that, he went to work. But one of the things that I did that night when I went back in my cell was I wrote him a letter because I wanted him to know the type of person he was representing. I wanted him to know that he wasn't representing somebody who had been in prison, caused any type of ruckus, but somebody who was actually in prison educating himself, who actually rehabilitated himself. So I wrote him. I sent him every single certificate that I had, which was at that point was like 50. I had like 50 certificates.
That's a whole copy card.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so, and even just throughout my stint, I had been a side companion for like 4 years. And so I wrote him and I just explained everything to him. Told him about, I at that time I had wrote like 4 books. I got 4 books that I wrote. And so, because I wanted him to know like I'm worth fighting for.
Right.
And so he, at that time, he was trying to actually get me immediate release because, like I said to you, nobody on my case received over 10 years. Mm-hmm. You had one of the co-defendants receive 18 months. The other one was 6.5 years. The other one, there was one that was 51 months. And then you had 3 that had 10 years. It was either 10 years, 9 months, 10 years, 7 months, or like 10 years and 5 months or something like that. And so I was the only one in my case that was sentenced to over 10 years. But yet, the pre-sentence report said I was considered to be an average participant.
Right.
And so for like 2 weeks, him and the government kind of was going back and forth because they didn't want to have to notify the Justice Department in D.C. They were trying to kind of do it in a way where it didn't have to be necessarily as loud. But for me,
they didn't want to tell them that they'd applied this law or
I'm assuming because they didn't
inaccurately.
I'm assuming because they didn't want. That was one of the things that he had stressed is that they were trying to do it in a way where they didn't have to notify the Justice Department. Now, one of the key pieces that's missing here too is that at the time of this discovery is the time when George Floyd got killed.
Okay.
In Minnesota, in Minneapolis. This is the exact same time George Floyd got killed. And so I don't know if you remember just during that time, but it's just how like it shifted everything when it came to, not being able to sweep certain things under the rug. My case was a case for years that got swept under the rug, apparently. Because if you look at it, I filed motion after motion and got denied every single time. When here it is, my sentence was illegal. From the day you handed it down, it was illegal. I never qualified for it. Mm-hmm. So myself and my family at this time, we were ready to go to the media to expose the federal government, because my case was a highly publicized case. I was on the news, I was in the newspaper, everything. And so it's like, well, you guys might as well, share with the community exactly what happened then. Tell the whole full story of it. And so, but he was like, no, like they just want to resolve it under the table. And so I'm like, okay, whatever. And so, like I said to you, he was trying to give me immediate release. And for like 2 weeks, they kind of went back and forth. And then it finally came to a point where they were stuck on 300 months, which was 25 years. And I can say you at that time, I had been locked up about 16 and a half years, almost 17 years. And so he called up there and he was like, hey, I need you to give me an answer. Like, this is what they're offering. And they're willing to file a joint motion with myself to notify the court that that they made an error in filing the 3 strikes law against you. and is agreeing to impose a sentence of 300 months, which is 25 years, and to also vacate and dismiss counts 11 through 19 for the 924C convictions. And so, of course, I told him, take it. Take it. And so I accepted the offer that they imposed. My lawyer and the government filed a joint motion asking the court to vacate my sentence and to ultimately resentence me to 240 months, which I'd already had, keep that one intact in place, and then also resentence on counts 20 and 21 to 5 years, and for the 5 years to run consecutive. So that's how we get to 25 years. And so from there, I stayed at Manchester until after they kind of opened up transfers again, and my points had dropped, and I was sent to a lower level of security. I was sent to a low, which was Sandstone, Minnesota.
So what are you at, 17 years now? 16 or 17?
17 years. I'm at 17 years at this point. And so my projected release date when that happened was September 14th, 2025 was my projected release date. But fast forward, but rewind it back, I had the First Step Act.
I was just gonna say,
Right.
I was like, oh, wait a minute, but maybe it doesn't apply because of the weapons.
But they dismissed them. They dismissed counts 11 through 9. If I'd have still had counts 11 through 19,
So what did you plead guilty? What'd you get?
I pled
What was it 20? What's it 20 years for?
conspiracy. Conspiracy.
okay, and
to
that does
commit
not
highway
violate.
robbery. Right.
Okay, yeah,
Right.
you could have been driving the car. You could have planned it.
Right. Right. And so ultimately, I qualified for the First Step Act. And so once because at first the Federal Bureau of Prisons they didn't know how to actually apply this stuff, and so for years we sat there just waiting and waiting, and then all of a sudden you look up, you got dudes who had been in there a year, 2 years past their date, had to get immediate release once their FSA finally kicked in.
That's Pete.
Right.
Pete, my buddy Pete did an extra like 18 months.
Right, exactly. Right, yeah, exactly. And so once the First Step Act, kicked in for me, of course they took that year off. So my projected release date changed from September 14th, 2025 to September 14th, 2024. And because I had accumulated so many days, I still had those days that can be applied towards halfway house or home confinement. And so at that time I got to Sandstone in 2021, and I was released Sandstone in 2023. But in Sandstone, you say I was close to home. I was no more than an hour away from home, so I got visits every weekend. I continue to still educate myself. It was there that I got certified as a personal trainer. And my plan or my vision at that time was to get out and to do the personal trainer thing.
Right.
That was important to me, because I had always been into fitness and stuff like that just throughout my incarceration. So yeah, I got certified as a personal trainer, and that was the goal was to come out of prison and do that, as well as to start my own trucking company. My case manager has submitted and was requesting that I be released from custody 17 months before my projected release date, but due to the bed space and the availability at the halfway house, they only gave me 13 months. And so August 13th, 2023 is when I was released from federal prison. At that point, I had served 19 years, 2 months, and 4 days. I walked out of prison. My brother was there. My daughter was there. One of my sons were there. And my grandson was there, as well as my niece and my nephew. And so it was a blessing, man. It was refreshing to be able to walk out of there after being denied so many different times and fighting for so long. But I look back, on it now, and I realize that everything played out the way it was supposed to. I know that had that not happened to me, that I probably would have never changed my life. I probably would have killed somebody. You never know.
You could be dead yourself.
Yeah, you can say, or I could be dead myself. So I embraced my entire journey. It made me, who I am today ultimately, which is a man of action, a man of purpose, somebody who's always trying to inspire, encourage, and motivate other people. I drew a lot of inspiration from a lot of people when I was in prison that helped to shape, who I am that's sitting before you, And so for me, walking out of prison on that day was about rebuilding Carlos. That was my goal. That was my focus. I didn't look back angry at anybody. I didn't look back holding any grudges against anybody, even though some people may feel like I would have all the right to. But I don't, because I put myself in that situation. For any of it to happen to me, for the guys to be able to sit there on the stand and point the finger at me, for the judge to be able to impose an illegal sentence, I put myself in the situation, so I take full responsibility for it. But I know that without it, you wouldn't have this best version of myself. I can stand firm and look in the mirror knowing that this is the best version of myself, and I know that it only gets better from here.
What about the podcast?
Right now I have a channel, a podcast channel called Rebuilding Carlos. I did a documentary about my entire story, just to kind of engage with people and give people an opportunity to better understand my story and just my upbringing and what I experienced and what I went through. And like I say again, it's called Rebuilding Carlos on YouTube. But see, I know for myself, like one of the goals that I have, like my first goal now is to at least reach 1,000 subscribers. That's my goal, right? That I just set for myself. My short-term goal that I set for myself right now. So I'm definitely hoping that people will subscribe. I definitely want to thank you guys for the opportunity to be able to come on here and to share my story. I think that a lot of podcasters don't give people an opportunity until they reach a certain level. But all of us have stories. You don't have to be this big-time rapper or this big-time anybody to share a real story that people can be inspired by, or that people can be encouraged by, or that people can be motivated by. So I definitely want to salute you guys for giving me an opportunity. I'm grateful. I'm humble for it. And I hope that after people seeing this, that they'll be able to look at me and gain some type of strength, no matter what it is that you're going through. Because despite what my circumstance or situation was, I'm living proof that a second chance is possible. And so even though I spent nearly 20 years in prison, you can still get out of prison after doing 20 years and be successful. And so I just encourage people to follow the journey, watch the story, and to also just pay close attention to the things that I speak on, which I mentioned a little bit before, where it's just like we have to start advocating for people that we know who are still sitting in prison. They don't deserve to be there. And so no matter what platform I go on, I'll always say, free Ralph Duke. So again, I thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you guys for the opportunity.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, the bell, so you get notified of videos just like this. Also, if you'd like to follow Carlos's journey and subscribe to his channel, which I hope you do, please go in the description box. We are going to leave the link to his channel. It is Rebuilding Carlos. Go there, subscribe. He's going to have some great content on there for you. Also, if you want to be a guest on the show, we're going to leave our link there too. You can go to our website. You can go to the Be a Guest page. You can fill out an application, leave a short video. We will get back with you. Once again, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. See ya.